Okay, everyone, so welcome to this HTML crash course for absolute beginners. And just to set your expectation before we go and begin, I just want to clarify that this is for absolute beginners. So if you have background in HTML or web development in general, this might not be the video for you. Secondly, here, we will not focus on CSS and aesthetics in this course, meaning we will focus on HTML5. So we will not be discussing concepts in design in this course. So we will not be able to create a fully beautiful website out of this course. However, we will be building a website template that you can use, and at least you will have an idea, and we will be covering some elements in this short crash course. I will be frank with you, we will not be able to cover everything because, again, if you're really serious in becoming a web developer, something that I tell my students is that you need to be patient, you need to have a positive learning attitude, and I really don't agree with some instructors that will tell you you can learn HTML within 5 to 10 minutes. For my personal opinion, that's not possible. And you will really need to be patient, and you should do a lot of research. So this is the reason why I have prepared some learning tips here. And something that I always tell my students is that you should achieve the highest level of enthusiasm when you're learning programming or when you're learning web development. And that is through you becoming a researcher, a practitioner, and a propagator. What do I mean by this? I would want to relate this to the RRA principle of the development community, meaning research, read, and then ask questions. So you have to do your research for problems that you might encounter, for things that you might be asking yourself. Becoming a researcher is going to be an essential skill if you're going to be in the information technology field. If you're going to get into the security, cybersecurity industry, into web development, software development industry, looking into Google and your favorite search engine to find answers to questions, and you being able to go and figure things out on your own through going through documentations of languages that you're learning, programming languages that you are learning. It's really important that you become a good researcher. And of course, most importantly, you practice. Practice, practice, practice is the way to mastery, as according to Zig Ziglar. So, become a practitioner, be an active learner, really do the code, don't just watch the video. You can actually watch the video and then afterwards, you can try to type the code. That's okay. At least you can practice the reread again, and then reread again concept by doing that. Me, sometimes if I have free time, I usually watch videos and then I go back to that video and then I try to practice and do the coding exercises uh, that has been taught in that specific video lesson. So as long as you practice, you do active learning, you can watch it first, then practice the things that you have learned in the video, or you can follow while the instructor or while I'm trying to code the information in our computer here or in my computer here. You have to become an active learner, and of course propagate, meaning one tip that I tell my students is that they should not be copying. That's against the code of ethics for professionals, plagiarism, as we may say it. I would rather suggest that you become an innovative person, innovate, try to improve on an old idea. And in building lessons for my students, I usually tell them, be at least be original. You can use my lessons, my projects as your guide, but don't totally copy it. Just use it as a guide for building your own design, for building your own layout. Be someone who is innovative. You get an idea from an old idea and then you try to improve on it. Okay. And again, one tip that I tell my students in any subjects that I teach is that you should be a propagator. Teach to learn, learn to teach. Uh, if, for example, you're having a difficult time in understanding a documentation, one tip that I tell my students is that you try to read it, reread it again, reread it again, reread it again, and then try to explain it using your own words up to a point that you would say that I have already understood this lesson that I am studying. Okay, and finally, if you cannot find as from the research read ask question, of course, if you cannot find a solution to a problem, you can always go to the community. There's a very nice community out there that can help you out. There will be people out there, international community that will be willing enough to help you out. That's something that personally in my learning journey I have seen and experienced, and I even met good people that are friends that I get to communicate with, and I can ask questions from. If, for example, I'm also stuck in an issue or a problem that I'm encountering. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Just, of course, first do your research first. Because again, even if you become a future web developer already, you will encounter Googling as part of your job already. So take note, HTML is what we call hypertext markup language. It is not a programming language. It's a markup language that is usually for presentational purposes only. This allows us to provide presentational display of information on a site, on our web site. It's not, if we try to compare it with a programming languages are usually very intricate. They have what we call the logic in there's a logic in a programming language, meaning there's some sort of dynamic behavior if you're going to be classifying a programming language as a programming language. What do I mean by that? Let's say, for example, a login page in your website, there's dynamic behavior in the site that you're building. However, with hypertext markup language, that it does not have any of those. There's no logic. Let's say, for example, there's a condition that if this is true, then we will be doing this. If not, we will be executing the other option that we have. So there's logic in it. But with hypertext markup language, there's nothing like that. We are focused on presentational uh, purposes, or a presentation of the information that we have, that we are writing in our website. Okay, so hypertext markup language is used for creating web pages. It is considered to be as the building blocks of the web. We can even create a website, a static site, by just using HTML, everyone, and CSS. So it's really important that you understand this. HTML is for semantic meaning, giving semantic meaning that can help improve the SEO, or search engine optimization of your site. Meaning, if, for example, you go to Google and you search the website that you have built, it will be ranked first if you have good search engine ranking. So it's really important that you give semantic meaning when you are using HTML, and when you create your code, the architecture of your code, you should be considering semantic meaning. And it's like the skeletal system of the human body. Okay, I would say we can compare HTML with the skeletal system of the human body. When you say CSS, on the other hand, that's what we call the cascading style sheet. That is more on as aesthetic, the skin of the human body. And when you say JavaScript, which is more on dynamic behavior, it's more on the brain function. In using the English language, guys, that will be similar to, just take note, if you're learning a programming language, or if you're learning coding, one thing that you have to consider here is that if you are talking with the computer will be giving you you will not be able to understand you if you don't give it specific instructions. Unlike when you are talking with another person, the other person will try to comprehend what you're trying to tell them. So the key point here, if you're writing your HTML code here, or let's say you're writing instructions to the computer, when you're trying to communicate with the computer, you have to be very specific and precise. You just take note of that. So moving forward here, um, what do we need to get started? We have here web browsers. I will be using Firefox in this crash course, everyone, but you can also use Google Chrome, Safari, Edge, and I'm sure you will not be able to use Internet Explorer, or you will not be using Internet Explorer. It's already I think Microsoft has already said goodbye to Internet Explorer. We will also need a text editor, everyone. You can go and use pre-installed software in your device like Notepad. We can actually use this for creating our web page or the HTML cheat sheet template that we will be creating. But I would recommend that you go and try to install Visual Studio Code, Atom, Sublime, Brackets, Notepad, or some other options. Me, I'm going to be showing you how to use Visual Studio Code in this crash course. But just take note, you can simply use a very basic application that is already installed in your operating system, such as Notepad, in writing HTML. Okay? Now, let's go and create our first HTML file. We can actually do this on the desktop by just opening or creating a file that ends with a .html extension. Just remember that we usually name our root file the index.html. That's the root homepage of a website. Usually, if you go to websites, you would see their index.html is the one that is the main page from where you can go and access that site. So we can do this through the window, uh, through our through our desktop here. I can actually go and create a folder here. I'm going to name this HTML crash course. And once I go there, you would see here, I can go and right click, create a text document, and I'm going to call this index.html. I'm sorry. Let's go and rename this index.html. You would see that the file extension has changed, or you would see that it shows us an icon of Firefox because my default browser is Firefox. If you're not seeing the .html here, just go to View here. On the View tab, you would see that you can click the file name extensions here. And you can actually open this file in our notepad here. So if I go to my desktop, HTML crash course, open. Oh, sorry. We have to click all files first. Then click that and open it. Now we have that index.html. It's still empty. However, once we go and click on this on our browser, you would see, let me just drag that here. You would see here that we don't need any hosting for us to be able to view the content of our document, our HTML document. Uh, but of course, if we want it to be published on the internet, we will have to go and buy a domain name or a hosting package. And from there, we will need to go and upload all of our files from our local machine, then upload it to our web host. Now, if I go and try to right click on the browser that we have here, we go check view page source, we can see that there's nothing here. And the URL here shows index.html, everyone. However, if I go and press on F12, that will enter the developer tools, or you can just go and let me just close this again and inspect. Choose the inspect option. You would see that it has some elements and tags here in our developer tools because of the browser's default settings. Just take note when I say elements, that will be the following here. We have the HTML element that contains its element content is the head and the body elements, or the head tag and the body tag. So sometimes you will be encountering the term element and tags. Sometimes they can be used interchangeably, everyone. Just remember HTML elements or HTML tags are the basic building blocks of any web page. We can see here that this index.html is located in our local machine. However, if you go to a website, you would see, let's go to one of the websites that I built using WordPress. You would see that it can be uploaded or it can be hosted by a web hosting company on the web, and you can access this anywhere on the internet. This one, the one that we have here, we can open it using our local machine. And if we go and try to right click on this and view page source, you would see we can see here a lot of content, HTML elements, JavaScript code, you would see here. So don't be too overwhelmed by this information, guys. I just wanted to show you that that's something that you can actually do. And you would see here that it is redirecting us to the view source. And it contains the directory. And right now we are viewing the about.html file that we have uploaded into our web server or web host. That means everything that we write, or the documents, HTML documents that we will be creating, we will need to go and upload it into our web host. And then we have to make sure that we name our main homepage index.html, because that is the file that is going to be shown in our root domain for our specific website. Just remember, guys, by default, index.html file is the one that is related to the root home directory of our website, unless you will be playing around with the server settings. So for now, that's just the basic information that I want you to understand. Right now, we are not seeing anything in our view source file here because we have not yet written anything on our HTML document index.html file. You would also see that the developer tools is showing us an error here, an error. If I close this and then I click on this, it shows us the error. The character encoding of the HTML document was not declared. The document will render with garbled text and so on and so forth. Okay, because of the declaration for the US ASCII range. So if the document contains characters from outside the US ASCII range, they will be displayed in garbled form. So that's one of the use of the developer tools, guys. So let me just close this. Now let's go to our notepad and let me go to our desktop, and let me see here. Go to my desktop here, HTML crash course, open that, and open our all files and index.html. Now let's just go and try to go and type here what we have so far seen in our developer tools, everyone. Let me go and increase this. And so if I go and save this, everyone, you would see here, this is just a straight line, okay? And if we try to go and refresh this, and then this is the first one that we opened up, and if we go and try to view page source, now we can see that we have our first line here. And that's the first line, guys. It's showing us here, the browser is showing us the first line of code that we have written. And as I've told you, we have to be specific when we are writing our code line by line. And right now we have our HTML elements. And if we go and try to go and inspect, those are the same default elements that were displayed by the developer tools when we haven't yet written our code in our text editor here. I use Notepad just to show you that this is something that we can actually do. We can create our first HTML document with a pre-installed software in our local machine, in our operating system. Right now, I am working with a Windows machine operating system. Just take note, everyone, that HTML tag syntax involve having an opening tag and a closing tag. And normally, the, the element name is enclosed between the less than character symbol and the greater than character symbol. And we have the closing tag having a forward slash in front of the element name, like the one that have we have here. Let me just increase that. So we have HTML element or HTML tag, also known as the root element, opening tag name. This is that part, and this is the closing tag name, and this is the element content, which are the children elements of the HTML parent element. Okay, And you would see here, guys, that it doesn't really matter if I go and try to make some line breaks in my code here. If I go and type here, hello world, let me just show you here, and then save that. So now the body opening tag and the body closing tag now has an element content. So this is the whole body element, and we have the element content here. And if I go and save that and refresh this, you would see automatically the developer tools here has shown us here. And if I go and click the inspector here, it's highlighting the body tag when I try to go and hover my mouse on top of the body element. And you would see now that it's displaying the hello world text that we have written here. And it is properly formatted. This is the conventional way of formatting our elements. You would see that the developer tools, the browser, is formatting our HTML elements the proper way. We have the first line, second line, third line, and fourth line of code. And it's really not being affected by how we wrote our code here. But it's good practice that we go and create some line breaks in our code. And usually the parent element, the root element here, or the HTML element, we normally put at least two spaces so that this is purely for reading purposes of the developers. Let's say I'm a developer, I'm a fellow programmer, and I go and try to look at your code, and I want it to be, let's say, for example, I want to read it. And if you're the one who wrote this and you did a single line, it will be difficult for me to read through your code. However, if you format it this way, it's a lot much easier to read for the eyes of the other developers. So I would normally, again, or we, the convention here is two spaces from the parent element and then the child element, and so on and so forth. Okay, so you would see here the element content, we have placed two spaces just for readability purposes, but again, that will not be affecting our code here. It's just showing up here in our developer tools that way. Okay, and if we go and try to view page sourced, and there we go, guys, we now have 6 lines, and it's a lot easier to read. We know that this is the parent element, these are the two child elements, we have the head element and the body element, and it has an element content, which is the hello world text that we have written. Now, the next thing that I would want to do here is to go and type Studio Code, and I would want you to go and download and install this, guys, because this is going to make our lives so much easier, and it will be making your life as a developer, web developer, much easier, guys. So you can pause this video and then try to install this into your computer, and then I'll run you through on some of the features that you can go and utilize while using Visual Studio Code. So let me go and open my Visual Studio Code here, guys. Visual Studio Code. You would see here, this is the Visual Studio Code welcoming page. It shows us here some getting started option. You can customize your setup. You can learn the fundamentals, boost your productivity. So we can go to help here and go to the welcome page, and it will show us here some interface overview. You would see it explains here some information that we can go and maximize and use. We have the file explorer, control plus shift plus E, search across the file, source code management. Usually this will be related to when you have already learned how to maximize the use of Git and GitHub. We have launch and debug using the control plus shift plus D. Manage extensions. These are some features that you can install in your Visual Studio Code so that it will be helping you out while you're coding. These extensions will be helping you out greatly in your productivity, meaning it will make our lives a lot easier, like maximizing the use of formatters, HTML formatters, and CSS formatters, and other programming languages that is supported by Visual Studio Code. You can also see here view errors and warnings by using the Control plus Shift plus M key. We have the Control plus the back code to toggle the integrated terminal. If you're familiar with the command line interface or the command prompt, guys, especially in the Linux environment operating system, which I highly recommend that you also go and look into already. As a developer, you will be needing the information or the skills of being able to navigate through directories in the command line interface or the terminal in Linux, because that's something that you will be encountering as a future developer, guys. So I would suggest that you go and familiarize yourself also with some commands of Linux machines. So we have here show notifications, and you can change the color theme. You can go and make it a best depending on your preference. I will stick with the default color, which is black or dark. You can set key bindings, guys. Let's say, for example, you have already experienced using Vim, Sublime Atom, or similar code editors such as the Visual Studio Code here. This will just make it easier for you to transition to Visual Studio Code, meaning some of the features that are present in Vim will also be present in Visual Studio Code. And you can also install tools in other languages like JavaScript, Python. You'll see Python here, Java, PHP, Azure, Docker, and more. You will see here that if I go click on that, it will show me some extensions, and you will see here it's showing me here that I have the Python IntelliSense. This will be auto-completing some Python commands. And we have C and C++ and Jupyter here. So I would suggest that you go and play around with the tabs here, guys. You can start, save, open a folder, open recent files. You can go and do basic commands that are present in other applications, window applications like undo, redo, cut, copy, paste, find, replace, and so on. We have selections here. We have the view tab here for you to check the command palette. We have open view here. We have the go command tab. We have the run tab for starting debugging. One of the most useful tab that I would suggest that you go and familiarize yourself will be the terminal. And as I've said, I would highly recommend that you go and familiarize yourself with the command line interface, may it be in the Windows command line, CMD. The commands that you will be executing here will be the same as the commands that you can execute in the terminal. Guys, especially if you will already be working with Git and GitHub, this is going to be essential skills, guys. And if you're going to be working with web servers that are running in a Linux machine environment. So you would see here, if I go and do the directory, this will show us the content of the current directory. If I go to the command line, that's the same thing. It will be showing us the content of the current directory in my Windows machine. Okay, so you would see here that's the same information that we have here. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that, guys. Now, the next thing that I would want to do here is to open a folder. I would want to go to our desktop and HTML crash course to open our index.html file that we have created using Notepad. So you can toggle the terminal, guys, by using Control plus the back code just on top of the, you'll see here, just on top of the tab key. And you can also increase, where's the view here? Let me just go and increase the, by using Control plus equal sign to zoom in, just to increase the size of the text here. Okay, so at least it will be a lot easier for you to see the view here. You can also go and split the editor, guys. Let's say, for example, you want to open another file here, like the CSS file. You can go and use the split editor here. And now that's our Visual Studio Code. So that's a quick overview of our Visual Studio Code interface. Now let's go and try to solve the issue that we have here. by maximizing the use of Visual Studio Code here. Just cancel that. And I'm just going to go and type HTML here, and this will have an abbreviation, and it will automatically generate for us some content. So let me go and copy this here and delete all of this. I just wanted to show you that this is going to be a very basic template that will be automatically generated by Visual Studio Code for us. If, for example, you're creating a new website or an HTML document, you will see how easy it is for us to be able to go and generate a basic template from where we can start coding. And if I go and try to save this and go to our browser here, now the error is already gone because we already have declared a character set here, which is UTF-8, using the meta tag element. Okay, so we were able to go and start debugging. You were able to solve one of the errors or the issues in your code, everyone. And that's the use of the developer tools here, everyone. It can provide us some information that we can go and maximize. We can write JavaScript code inside of our developer tools. We can go and maximize the use of the console tab when we are trying to go and test some of the JavaScript code that we have written. We can play with the console tab here if we want to go and try some code in JavaScript that we have written. We can also check the network here for us to be able to see what are the pages that are loading. So just remember, the developer tools is going to be a very useful part of your life while debugging and doing some testing for your code or for your website. So it will be useful, very useful for debugging and finding out what is wrong with your code. You would see here that you can go and use this for responsive design mode. You would see that you can go and test the responsiveness of your site. You can test out the different devices that you can go and check out. So we will not be tackling responsive web design in this course, guys, but I just wanted to show you that. Now let's go and look at the code that we have here that was generated by our Visual Studio Code here. And we can see here the doctype HTML declaration. Just take note, the doctype HTML declaration here is not an HTML tag. It's actually a declaration that this is an important part of your document to identify the version of HTML that you are using. We will not be discussing the other versions, everyone. Just take note that the doctype declaration here is usually just simply used to identify the mode, how your the mode that your website is running. So if we go to our website here and I go and check, let's see here, site information. Let's see here for more information. You will see here that it says in the general information that we are running a standards compliance mode. So normally the doc type declaration allows us to go and set the mode or the render mode of our website. So if you go and try to check out and do some research about this, you will see here quick quirks mode, and try to look at the documentation about what is the quirks mode, the standards mode, guys. Quirks mode and standards mode. So here's a good documentation area, the MDN web docs, from where you can go and read through the different information about different elements. So you would see here quirks mode, the standards mode, guys. We have full standards mode, almost standards mode, and if we go down here, it will show us that the doc type shown in the example, the doc type HTML here is the simplest possible and the one recommended by HTML5. Earlier versions of the HTML standard recommended other variants, but all existing browsers today will use full standards mode for this doc type, even the dated Internet Explorer 6. So make sure you put the doc type right at the beginning of your HTML document. Anything before the doc type, like a comment or an XML declaration, or will be triggering quirks mode in the Internet Explorer 9 and older. So in HTML5, the only purpose of the doc type is to activate full standards mode. So just for additional information, guys, just in case that this gets to be that will be something that might be raised in an interview, at least you know that there's what we call the quirks mode, full standards mode, and what's the other one? Let's see here. Almost standards mode. Okay, you would see here that this is an important declaration. That's why we have the exclamation mark before the doc type name here. There are also other declarations, guys. If you're going to be building a website that is older, or let's say, if for some case you will need to go build a website that will be running on other declaration formats, there's what we call the HTML 4.01 streak, XHTML 1.01 streak, which is quite difficult actually, guys. If you would see here, you have to go and do this long doc type declaration way back before. If you have experience building websites way back before, you will need to go and specify the following declarations here. And of course, if you will be using XHTML, or extensible hypertext markup language, which is a lot more stricter than the HTML5 declaration here, or HTML5 version here. Okay, I just wanted you to go and know that. Now we have here the HTML document structure, and that is the following: the very basic template that was generated for us by the IntelliSense of Visual Studio Code. And you would see here that the very basic elements that were generated was the head element and the body element inside of the HTML root element. Okay, we can see here the, again, as I've said, we have the parent element, which is the HTML root element, and we have the head element and the body element as its child elements. And inside of the head element, it has some metadata information. You would see that it doesn't appear on our browser. However, these are information that are very important for describing the type of document that you are creating. And usually this is very useful, especially for search engines such as Google, for it to know more information about what your website is all about, so that it can go and improve your search engine ranking, or search engine optimization, as we may call it, or SEO. We can see here that we have the title bar here, and it shows your document. So the head element also contains the title element as its child element, and that's one of the content of the head element that will be displayed on our browser, on the title bar or title tab of the browser. So if I go and change this home page, and let's say HTML cheat sheet template, we can go and save this and go back to our browser. Where's our browser here? Refresh, and now there we go, homepage HTML cheat sheet template. And if I go and hover on top of it, it shows us a tooltip describing the whole content of the title tab that we have here. The head element also contains keywords. As I've said, guys, we can go and specify keywords. We can go and use links to files like CSS files and JavaScript files that we want to use. We usually put that inside of our head element. And you would see in the body tag that we have the actual markup, or the element content that will be displayed in our browser. So just to give you some differentiation between HTML elements and tags, let's see here. So when we say HTML elements and tags, guys, the term HTML element is used to indicate all parts of the element, including the starting tag, element content, and the ending tag. And elements are composed of tags, and we usually use tag when referring to a starting tag or ending tag of an element. Okay, and take note, guys, we also have what we call empty elements, also sometimes referred to as self-closing tags, singleton, or void elements. One good example of void elements, guys, is the meta element here. You would see it's a void element. It doesn't have any form of closing tag, or it doesn't have a closing tag like the ones that we have here. We have the HTML closing tag, the body closing tag, and the head closing tag, the title closing tag. But the meta tag doesn't contain or doesn't need a closing tag because it doesn't cater to element contents. It doesn't have any element contents. It has attributes. Just remember that the head element is a container of metadata, or what we call data about data. And we can put here, besides from the title tag, we can go and put the link tag that is usually used for referencing a source, like for example Google Fonts. We can use the style tag if we will be embedding style sheets or CSS styles in our website here, in our HTML document here. We can use the base tag, the script tag if we will be writing JavaScript, and the no script tag. We can all put those elements or tags inside of the head element. Other metadata information that we can go and place here, guys, is let me just copy paste here. Keywords. We can go and maximize the use of meta tags that will be describing the content of your site. Let's say, for example, our site will be an HTML cheat sheet. So we can go and type here HTML. We can put here contents like HTML, CSS, JavaScript that can help search engines to identify the content of our website. So we can say cheat sheet. Okay. One reminder, guys, as much as possible, try to limit your keywords up to 3. That's something that I've read in a forum, and that's something that you might want to go and check out. Also, try to do some research about how many keywords that you can go and use for describing your website. And another meta tag here, guys, that I would want to go and show you here is the meta tag for the author of your website. Let's say, for example, in this case, I'm the author of this HTML cheat sheet template here, so I can specify my name here. In your case, you can put your name here in the meta tag element here. Another element that we can go and place inside of the head element is the style tag element, or the style tag. So we have here the style opening tag and the closing tag, and we can insert here for its element content the body selector. We call this the body selector because we are using the name of the element. So you would see here, this is the body selector, the name of the element that is down here. And if we want to go and change the aesthetics of our website here, we are currently uh, we have the browser displaying a white background as of now. And if we want to go and change that, we can go and use CSS styling. So this will be defining the style information or CSS of our document. And in this case, we are using the style tag to embed the CSS code inside of our index.html file. And we would want to go and change the background color, so we will need to go and select here background color property, and I'm going to go and change it to pale goldenrod. And if I go back to our browser and refresh this, you would see now that we were able to change how the browser is displaying the background color of our web document, our index.html file. So the style element will be specifying how our HTML elements should be rendering in a browser, and it will show us how it will be displayed based from the properties that we have declared inside of our CSS code here. So here we have the body element selector, and this is our code block that contains the property background color pale goldenrod. Now, if we go and go down here, we have the body element that will be defining the document's whole body. And that's where the hello world text is found. And usually, the body tag will contain other elements that will be displayed on the browser, on our screen. So this can include the paragraph element. In this case, we can go and put the hello world here. And other elements will be headings, images, hyperlinks, tables, lists, and etc. In our whole HTML document here, we can only have one head element and one body element. Now let's go and talk about HTML comments, everyone, and we can go and write comments in our HTML document using the characters that we have here. And Visual Studio Code is actually providing us autocomplete here. And this will not be displayed in the browser but can help document our HTML document for readability purposes for both you and other developers. So let's say, I would say here, this is not going to be parsed in the browser. If I go and save that and go to our browser here, you would see that it's not parsed in our browser. And if I go here, check the inspector, you would see that it's there. The developer tools is once we hover on top of it, it's there. However, it's easy for us to read that this is the comment that we have written when we started creating our document at the part of our just below our body element. Okay, so normally what I will do here is I will be using comments so that it will be reminding me on what is happening inside of my code. Let's say for in this case, this is the heading section. So I'm going to go and I usually put this, guys. I usually put some asterisks here. At least it will be a lot easier for me to view it here on our small section or right section of our Visual Studio Code, especially if you have already written a lot of code here. Me having this line of comment allows me to go through the small representation of the code that I have here on the right side of our Visual Studio Code. Now, if we want to go and put some comments inside of our style tag, we will need to go and maximize the use of the forward slash, asterisk symbol, and another asterisk symbol, and then the other forward slash here. So you would see here, we can go and do the same here. I'm just going to copy this, Control C, and I'm going to call this heading section inside of our style tag. This is so that if I'm going to be writing code or HTML elements inside of our body element that will be displayed on the browser, and I will be writing CSS code for changing how my HTML elements will be displayed on the browser, it will be easy for me to identify that this is the heading section that is related to the heading section of my body element that is being displayed on the browser. Okay, so let me just and there we go. Now a shortcut key, and again, let's just go and first try to refresh this. You would see here that we have the heading element here and the style tag here, and it shows us the comment heading section here. Okay, and it's not being displayed on the browser. And if we want to go and comment out this hello world, we can actually use the shortcut key for that. I'm going to press on the control key and press on the K character and then C, and you would see it automatically commented out hello world. If I go and save that and refresh this, you would see now that the hello world text is now commented out, and that's why it's no longer being displayed on the screen. So that's just a quick way on how you can go and comment out HTML content and even CSS content, guys. So let's say, for example, I want to go to my background color here and Control K. You would see Control K was pressed, waiting for second key of chord and C. And if I go and press Control Save and I go and refresh this, and now the white background, again, we are now um, seeing here the browser displaying a white background. Okay, and if we can also do the exact opposite, guys, we just need to go and select all of that, Control K and C. You will see it goes back the way we want it to be. So that's just a quick way on how you can go and comment out CSS and HTML content in our document. And there we go. We now have the background color back, and we have the hello world text back on our browser display. Now let's go and talk about the semantic tags or elements in HTML5. So we use them to lay out our website, guys, the semantic tags, and this will be providing us semantic meaning that will help search engine optimization, improve your search engine optimization, and even assistive technologies to go through your website. And we have the following tags here, guys. We have the header, footer, aside, main, article, nav, section, details that are giving semantic meaning to the content of our site. So let's say we use the header tag. This means that this is going to be a header of our website, or the section of the header area of our website. We have the footer section, we have the aside. So when we say header, we usually have our logo and social media links there. When we say the nav tag will normally contain the nav bar, and the section tag will be describing the sections of our document. We have here the aside tag here that will be involving sidebar content. And again, guys, those are just some semantic. We are giving semantic meaning. It's like you're giving a landmark for assistive technologies to identify a section of your site or a part of your site. It will be a lot easier for assistive technologies to identify, for example, the first article, because it's inside of the article element of your site. It will be able to go and check out the footer. Let's say, for example, if you're going on a certain town, everyone, and you would want to go and to your friend's house in that town, you will be asking your friend specific details on how to get to their house, and you will be looking for a landmark so that you will not get lost. Okay, and that's the same thing here that we are doing here. We are providing specific instructions that this is the header section, this is the footer section, this is the aside section, and this is a section of the document, and so on and so forth. And this is the main section, guys. So those are just things that you can go and try to consider when you're building your website, guys, maximizing the use of semantic meaning. And semantic tags are used by HTML5 so that we can go and document our document much better, guys. It provides us better information about the different contents of our document. So if we go and try to see here, here's a common layout that you might see if you're browsing through the internet and you're checking out sites. We have the header, the navigation, the first section, then the article, the aside, the footer area from where the copyright and privacy content is placed inside of our web document. In our document here, guys, I'm just going to copy paste here some comments because we would want to tackle some elements that will be related to the main section, the about section, blog post, table, form, and footer section of our site. So we can go and use this section of comments from where we can go and put our code later on. Now, the next thing that I want to show you here is a documentation about flow content. And one thing that you have to remember is that most elements that are used in the body of documents and applications are categorized as flow contents. And if you go to W3C recommendation, you would see here some categories for flow content. So the flow content contains all of these following elements. If we try to hover here, you would see abbreviation, address, area, article, aside, audio, and etc. and so on. And we can see here the definition. Your section content, heading content, phrasing content, embedded content, interactive content are all types of flow content. So that's the following here. Okay. And metadata is sometimes flow content. You would see here. It is sometimes considered as phrasing content. Similar with the interactive content. Okay, you would see here some of the elements that are categorized as interactive content. And embedded content is also a type of phrasing content. You would see here. And sometimes it's an interactive content, and that's why it's over the circle here is overflowing to the interactive content. So we also have other categories used for specific purposes. Form controls are specified using a number of categories to define requirements. Some elements have unique requirements and do not fit into any particular category. So one of my tip here, guys, and something that I always tell my students is that you should practice the KURA acronym, which I formulated. I say KURA from the know that it exists, understand what it is used for, remember through repetition by retaining the information by means of going back and using the information by practicing what you have learned and then applying it in real projects that you will be building. Okay, so you would see here some documentations, and I would suggest that you read through this, guys, and it explains what is metadata content, that sets up the presentation or behavior of the rest of the content. It will also be setting up the relationship of the document with other documents. We have section and content that defines the scope of headings and footers. We have heading content defines the header of a section. And we have here phrasing content that specifies the text of the document as well as elements that marks up the text at the intra-paragraph level. So again, I would suggest that you read through the documentation, everyone, and that's why I'm saying that you should be patient. If you don't understand the documentation, the first time that you read it, go and try to reread it again, then try to reread it again, and then try to go and explain it in your own words. So that's just one of my tip. Now let's me just go and copy paste this here. So at least this will be our reference for styling that we will be implementing here in our HTML document. So here I would want to go and have a header. Here I would want to have a main element from where I will be putting all of this here. And here we will have a footer element. Now here I just want to go and put section in the about section, the blog post section, table section, the form section, and we can go and right click on our Visual Studio Code and format document with format document. I have installed Prettier Code Formatter that can be found here, guys. If you go and try to search Prettier, you would see that's there, and that's the one that I use for formatting some of my documents, especially CSS. And there's also the HTML language features here, and you would see it automatically aligned the format of my HTML elements. From the parent element, we have the parent element body element, we have the child element of the body element, and it has its sibling, the header element, the main element, the footer element, and the main element also has its child elements. We can see here that we have 3 section elements that are considered as the child element of the main element. So this is what we call the nesting of elements, everyone. It has to be in a proper way. So for example, here the body element has the opening tag body element and the closing tag body element. And it has its child elements inside of it in between the opening and the closing tag, which are the following: the paragraph, the header, the main, the footer elements. And then here we can see that the paragraph element has element content, which is the hello world. If, for example, we would want to go and put another element in between the opening and closing tag paragraph element, we will need to make sure that if, for example, we want this to be bold, or let's say have some bold styling, or let me just put this here. Sorry, guys. And here we have the closing tag. This is just going to be similar with if you're using Microsoft Word. This will turn the element B tag will be turning your document here into bold. And there we go. And that's just specifically for the B tag is usually used for making our text bold. It doesn't have any specific semantic meaning. Okay, so the proper way of doing this, we have the parent element, the child element, the element content, then we close the child element, and then we close the parent element. It should not be, the child element's closing tag should not be outside of the parent element's closing tag. Okay, that's a big no-no. So that's just something that I wanted to show you guys. Now let's go to our CSS here. I know that we will not be tackling too much CSS, guys, but I just wanted to show you here uh, some of the things that we can do. So at least we can work on our document here, and it will look like it's already a website that you can, a static website that you can go and use as part of your portfolio. And again, as I've said, please do try to be creative. I would suggest that you can improve on the design that I'm going to be working on here, guys. I don't want to limit your creativity in this project, guys. I would suggest that you go and play around and try to test things out, try to read some other documentations, maximize the use of the layout that we will be doing here as your guide, but don't totally copy it. Implement your own creativity in the project that we will be building, okay? So here, guys, we have already specified that we have sections specifically for about, for the blog post, for the table, and for the form. Now we can go and insert another element in between the section tags, and we can use the div tag, which will be defining a division or a section in an HTML document, but it doesn't have any semantic meaning. So the div tag is usually used to add a section in a document, and we can target that tag for us to be able to apply CSS layout or design. So let me just show you that here. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to div that, and I would want to call this about. And you would see here there's an IntelliSense autocomplete feature of our Visual Studio Code here. Now we can go and target this class name. This is called a class attribute, a class name that we can go and target in our CSS. Okay, so same here, guys. What I'm going to do here is div dot the accessory property accessory character. Commonly the dot signifies that it will be accessing the property of this div element once we go and try to reference it in our CSS. So I'm going to call this blog post. I'm just using here camel case. This is a common convention when you're coding. You will encounter the term camel case. So you start with a small letter for the first word, and the second letter will be capitalized. Okay. And again, I'm going to press on the tab key. Now we have a completed div element with an opening tag with a class name about and a div closing tag. Similar here, let me just put a space here, div.table, and here we'll be targeting this as div.form, and save this. Now we can go and target all of this CSS here, CSS class names here in our style tag. But before that, we have the heading section here. I would want to go and also put a div there. I will call it header, and that will be the one that I'll be targeting here in the heading section. And I'm going to give it a property of 100 VH, which just simply means that it will occupy the full viewport height, and that's the height of the browser right now when it's in full screen. Okay, and let's go back here, and I would want to have it as to have a background color of, let's say for the meantime, I would want to have it colored blue, for example. So if I go and refresh this, you would see that it's now colored blue, and there's default values here, guys. I'm just going to go and remove our hello world text here. Control K and C just to practice what we have learned so far, or we can actually go and try to put that not outside of the header but inside of our div element here, and control save and go here and refresh, and now it's inside of the header element. You would see that the hello world text is now inside of the div header element. And the reason why this is not covering the whole viewport is because of default values found in our browser. I'm calling this div header element because of the class name header that we have used to reference this div element. Okay, just take note, this is a div element with a class name header that we targeted using the header selector class selector. So now we are now using a class selector. We used here an element selector because we're maximizing the use of the element name, and here we have a customized name that we use to target the div element here, or the specifically this div class name header that we specified. You can write here anything that will be easy for you to remember that this is a header, part of the header section. I just use the name header here because I would want to use the div element here to position my other elements inside of my header section element that provides semantic meaning, that gives information that this is a header section inside of my web document. Okay, I hope that that is clear, and let me just go and put some reminders here that this is going to be styling section. So one other way that you can go and maximize the use of Visual Studio Code is by using the Alt key, then holding the Alt key, click on the line that you would from where you would want to type your code or content, and here I'm going to type here in each of the lines sections. You will see the cursor is now being shown on our screen in each of those lines from where I have clicked my mouse on. And if I go and type styling, so this is a quick way for you to go and input content into our document. So if we go and check here, guys, as I've told you, this does have some default values. And if we go check this div header, and let's check the body here, and we go to the layout here and box model, you would see that it has default values being rendered by the browser. So if we go and try to make this 0, you'll see that the margin on the left side is now gone. And if I go and try to make this 0, and again, the margin on the left side is also gone. And if we go down here, if we want to remove that margin, we can go and try to give a value of 0 here. And you would see now that we have the following layout for our div header, div element with a class name header. Just take note, everyone, if we go and make some changes in our browser using the developer tools, that will not be affecting our code here. And you will see that we didn't apply any changes in the margin property of our body element here. So if we go and try to refresh this, it will go back to that default values. So you will see if I go back here, it's still, if we try to hover on top of it, the margin left still has 8 margin, right still has 8 margin, and just take note of that, guys. And now what I want to do here, so that we can go and try to occupy the whole height and width of the header of the body element, we would want to fill the header area or the full viewport here, and I don't want any margins for the top, left, right, and bottom. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and do a universal selector. I'm going to use the universal selector here, and I'm going to make margin 0. And this is CSS, guys. So I won't be discussing too much about this, but again, this is a one technique, guys, for you to do this, for you to be able to remove the default values. And we are maximum. Just take note, this is a universal selector. This is a code block, CSS code block. This is a margin property, padding property, and box sizing property, and we're going to give it a border box value. And if we go and try to refresh this now, there we go. We now occupied the whole viewport of our browser, of our screen. Now, what we're going to do next here, I'm just going to go and select the About selector that we have used. And we're just going to apply the same property here. We can just go and turn this to pink if you want. So you can just choose whatever color you would want, guys. And blog post, same property, height 100 VH, background color will be green. Then here we have our table styling section. Let's go and call this table. Then let's have height 100 VH. Let's just go and maximize this as a placeholder, everyone. And light blue, just so that we can go and distinguish each of the section. Okay, let's have the form height 100 VH, background color is yellow, and for the footer section, let's just go and footer height 100 VH, and background color will be black or 000 hexadecimal value. So we can make this 25 VH, guys, just so that we'll have some sort of example that of how it will look if we change the viewport height. And now, guys, you would see that the scroll bar here is now opened, and we can now scroll down. And for each of the viewport, we now have the pink, the green, the light blue, the yellow, and we also have, let's see here, why did the footer section did not, okay, we did not put here a div.footer. Okay, so let's go and go back here. And there we go. We now have a footer section. We now have sections for our static website here. And we can see that each of the sections are now appearing on our browser as we scroll down once our scroll bar has appeared, because we have specified the property viewport height for each of the sections that we have written in our code here. Now, the next thing that I want to do here, everyone, is to first go and try to Control A, Control C, go to your beloved search engine. Right now, I'm using DuckDuckGo, and you will see if you search HTML validator, you will find the validator.w3.org. It will be checking your markup validity of web documents in HTML, XHTML, and so on. And if you wish to validate specific content such as RS, atom feeds, or CSS style sheets, this will be helping you validate if you're complying with the schema specified by those who standardize HTML5. So let's go and try to do this. I'm going to maximize the use of validator.nu. This is one of my favorite validators. And if I'm going to go here and paste all of the things that I have written in my code, Let's go down and let's see if we can go and try to check the schema if we are complying. You would see it's telling me the document validates according to the specified schemas. However, there are some sections that we need to solve, and we need to go and try to find how to solve these warnings. It says your section lacks heading. Consider using H2, H6 elements to add the identifying headings to all sections. So let's now go and start debugging, guys. So when we say headings, these are, let's see, let me open my presentation here. Headings are titles or subtitles that you want to display on a web page. HTML headings are defined with the H1 to H6 tags. H1 defines the most important heading, defines the least important heading, or H6 defines the least important heading. So this is the format. We have the opening H1 tag and the closing H1 tag, and we have the element content here. So we have the H1 element. And if we have H2, we have heading 2. So please take note that the browser's default has some core styling in it, and H1 is going to be the one that has bigger text. And you can also add some padding around the edges using CSS if ever you would want to go and push some of the content a little bit down, if ever, or you want to add some spaces. Now let's go back to our code editor here, and let me just go and type H1 heading 1, H2 heading 2, H3 heading 3, H4 heading 4, H5 heading 5, H6 heading 6. Just to show you how this will look once we go and try to go to our browser here. Let's refresh. And now we have, you would see heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4, heading 5, heading 6. And we have our hello world with the bold text here. Let me just go and try to take this out, Control K and C. Then go back here. And there we go. You would see that the heading 1 here has the biggest font size. And as I've said, guys, it has default values. If I go and hover on this and look at the fonts here, it has 32 pixels, default value, line height, normal, spacing, normal. You can actually play around with this, guys, if you want. Okay, just to see how it will look like if you're doing some debugging and testing, or you want to see how it will look. You can even make all of the heading elements here the same size. The thing that we normally do, everyone, if we go back to our validator here, it tells us to add identifying headings to all sections. This is normally for the hierarchy of importance. We maximize the use of the proper heading from H1 to H6, depending on the importance of the hierarchy of the content that you are including into your site. So we usually use the heading 1 for the header section to identify what we would want to go and tell our viewers what our site is all about. So if we go and try to hover on heading 1, we can see it's heading 2, sorry. We can see that it has 24 pixels. Here we have 18.72 pixels for heading 3. Those are the default values. So if you want to go and check what is the default values of the browser for the following heading elements, you can actually do that here. Okay, and we can even change the colors of these guys by going to our code here. And if, for example, I want to go and change the heading 1 color, I'm going to just select the color property and I'm going to give it a white color. Then go back here. There we go. We now have a heading 1 with a color property of white. If I want to go and add some space, we can go and try to play around with this. Just to give you some ideas, if ever you will be already working with CSS, I can go and play around with the padding, top, bottom, left, and right. Let's say 20 pixels. this will be occupying. If I specify just one value here, this will specify and target the top right. Let me go back to our, so you would see it specified 20 pixels from the top, from the right, from the bottom, and from the left. So that's one way to target your element to add some spacing using the padding property. So let's go back here and let's remove that. Don't want that. Now let's go and try to solve the concern here. Let's add H2 elements to each of the sections. So let's go back to our code here and go down here, and I'm going to go and give this an H2 for about page. Let's have an H2 here for blog post articles. And here let's have a table data content. So let's just say table information or content for a specific content, for example, that we're going to go and try to categorize in our page here. We can also go and add here, but of course we need to go and give this H2 table information. Sorry for that, guys. And let me delete this. Let me save that. And here, let me go and put H2 subscribe. Let's see. Let's refresh this. There we go. Now let's go down. We have about page. We have the blog post articles, table information, subscribe, and so on. Now let's go and try to see if I go and Control A this, all, Control C, copy, go back to our validator. Let's just see if this will be solving our concern. And let's go and try to validate one more time. And let's see if it will be, and there we go. We were able to solve the issues or the warnings that was specified by the validator. Okay, so we were able to comply with the specified schemas. Now, I hope that you got the idea on how to use a validator to check your code, everyone. Now, let's go back here, and I just want to go and target the heading 1 here and give it a background color of orange red, just to see how that will look. You would see here, I maximize the use of the background color property to show you that this is a block element, everyone. And that is the reason why it is occupying the whole screen here. So we do have here, let me just show you my presentation here. Inline or block level elements, everyone. So when we say inline elements, they will not be starting on a new line. They do not start on a new line. They will only take necessary width, such as the span element, image element, anchor element. And when we talk about block level elements, they will start on a new line. They will take full width available on the screen. And examples of these elements are div h1 to h6, paragraph, and form. So let's go and check out paragraphs. Let's go and add a paragraph to our document. And remember, a paragraph always starts on a new line. Browsers will automatically add some white space margin before and after a paragraph. And as I've said, everyone, this is a block level element. So if we go back to our code editor here, and let's go down to our about page markup here. And I would want to use a paragraph here, and I'm going to go and get my notepad here, and I'm going to go and try to copy this content of an introduction that I made for myself. So I'm going to paste this, and let's see here. Perhaps I can go and just for white space actually doesn't matter here, guys. I'm just formatting it so at least it will be a lot easier for you to read. Now let's go and save this. Let's go back to our browser and refresh. And we now have our first paragraph here. And if we go and try to create another paragraph, I'm going to maximize the use of one of the features of HTML here. Let me just go and put that here. Paragraph, lorem, text. This is going to be dummy text that will be automatically generated through the use of Visual Studio Code, guys. Let me save that. You would see we have that here. And if I go back here and refresh, you will see it started on a new line. Even though in our code, I typed here it continuously in line 92. So it really didn't affect the way it was displayed on the screen. And if I go and save that, guys, I made some changes. It's now on line 94 here and refresh. It's still on a new line here, guys. And as I've said, the white space or the space that we made here will not be affecting how it will be displayed on the browser. And if we go and try to go and target the two paragraph elements here, guys, we can just use the element name. So I'll go to the about styling section here, and both the paragraph element in this case will be targeted by just using one element name, and that's the paragraph element uh, name here, which is the letter P. So I'm going to go and change the background color just for us to see what will happen, guys. And if I go back here, now that we have a background color, at least you would see that if I go and press on the developer tools here, that's how it's occupying the whole screen, guys. You would see that the text for the paragraph 1 here is occupying the whole width, and the paragraph 2 here is occupying the whole width, and it had a line break here automatically because the property of our, let me just inspect this, paragraph element, you will see if I go to the layout, it has a display block property. And if I go and try to play around with this, I can go and say display inline. Let's change the property. And now you would see the line break is gone and it's not occupying the whole width anymore. It's only occupying the necessary width. So that's the difference between a display block and a display inline. So I hope you understood that. So let's go and refresh this so it will go back to the following here. And let me just close this and I go to our code editor here. I would want to go and of course remove this. Let's comment that out for a while. And I would want to go to this paragraph section. You would see it's a lot easier to check out the sections by using this visual representation here, just for my personal preference, guys, when I'm working. And right now here, guys, I just want to remove this second paragraph, and I just want you to go and write your own description about yourself, so at least it will be more customized. You can customize the layout or the template that we are doing here right now. The next element that I would want to discuss here is the strong element or the strong tag. This is used to define text with strong importance. So this is a semantic tag, everyone. And the content inside or the contents inside is typically displayed in bold. It will have the same property as the B tag, which will be displaying bold text without any extra importance. But if we want to give semantic meaning to the content, we will be using the strong tag. Just take note of that, everyone. This text would be marked as strong and will be marked as important. And this is a semantic tag. And the B tag is not semantic. Just that's the key thing to remember here. And it's not recommended anymore. And similar with the EM tag, we'll talk about the EM tag later on. Instead of the I tag, if you remember in working with words, the Word document, guys, in a Microsoft Word document, we have B and I there. So B stands for bold. It will be displaying text in bold, and I will be displaying text in italic. So in HTML, we maximize the use of the EM tag because that will be giving us some semantic meaning to the content, and not the I tag, which is normally just for displaying content in italicized form. The EM tag here, guys, is the EM. You would see that's how it looks. This is used to emphasize text. The content is usually displayed in italic, and the screen reader will be pronouncing the words in EM with an emphasis using verbal stress. If, for example, again, assistive technologies like screen readers will be pronouncing this with emphasis. That's why we maximize the use of this instead of the I tag. Now let's go to our code here. We can see that if I go and refresh this, now the second paragraph is gone. And I would want to go and make this strong or bold. And I would want to go and try to go and make this bold and also give emphasis to the text that we have here, the HTML crash course text that we have here. So let's go to our strong element. Let me just go and put the closing tag, put the element content, which is my name here, and let's go and also put strong tag here, strong, and let's see how that will look on the screen. You would see it's now bold, guys. Both the text here and here are now both in, it has default values that displays the text in bold. Computed value, we have here fonts 16 pixels, font weight is 700, guys. Now if I go to this section of my content here and I go and wrap the HTML cheat sheet template text here, let's see how that will be displayed by the browser. If I go and refresh this, you'll see it's also bold. And if I go and try to select this part, the B element has 700 font weight and 16 pixels font size. So it's almost the same, but the difference between the two guys, again, the B element doesn't have any semantic meaning. It's only for aesthetics, for making the text bold. And on the other hand, if we go and maximize the use of the strong tag, this will be giving semantic meaning that can help out assistive technologies understand that this is an important text. And I also want to go and turn this into italic. So what I can go and try to do here is to maximize the use of the EM tag. And I'm going to nest it inside of the strong tag. So again, if you're nesting elements, make sure that the parent element will be wrapping the child element's starting tag and closing tag. Okay, if I go and try to go back to our code editor here, now we have our HTML crash course italicized. And if I go and try to specifically target the EM here, we can see that the italic option here in our fonts tab in our developer tools is now turned on. Now let's go and talk about images. We can maximize the use of the image tag, and you would see it's a self-closing tag or a void tag, which means it doesn't require us to have a closing tag because we will not be putting any element content in between the image tag here and a closing tag. We maximize the use of attributes, the source attribute and the alternate text attribute for us to be able to target the source of the image. We can also specify a width and a height attribute for image, guys. So let's go to our code editor here and let's go and try to put an image tag here, and automatically a source attribute and alternate attribute was generated for us. And I can actually put here I am a picture, a description. If, for example, your image won't be loading, this will be the description that will be shown on our browser. A picture of our author, Rodrigo Bonjour S. Lopez. So if I go and try to leave this blank and we go back to our browser here and I go and try to refresh this, you would see that's the alternate text that was displayed. And if we want to go and try to maximize the use of an image, I'm just going to grab here an image here. Usually we put our images in a folder named images, but for now, I'll be targeting it from our current directory, which is the HTML Crash Course directory. And here, if I know the name of the image, Visual Studio Code will actually help us out for autocomplete. Now let's go and refresh our browser. And there we go. We now have our image, but it's occupying a lot of space in our static site here. So we need to specify a height and width property for our image here. We can go and target an attribute, or we can go and maximize the use of a class name. So let me just close this. I'm going to go and give this a class name of that about image. I'm using block element modifier here, guys. Sorry, there should be no dot there. And I'll go to the about page here, or about styling section. And I'm going to go and target that about image. And I'm going to go and give this a height of 20 rem and a width of 20 rem. And if we go check on our browser here, and there we go. We now have an image here. We can perhaps work on how it will be displayed by our browser, but now it's only occupying 20 rem. Rem, by the way, is a unit for our CSS. So we have several different units for expressing a length, everyone, in CSS, and rem is one of those. Now let's go and talk about the aside element, everyone. And these are some things that you can take note of about the aside element. It defines some content besides from the content that it is placed in. And the aside element should be indirectly related to the surrounding content. It is often placed as a sidebar in our document. And it does not render anything special in a browser. And we can maximize the use of CSS to style our aside element. And usually we can go and maximize the use of it for an example here. We can maximize the use of a navigation inside of it, and we can go and categorize some content um, that can be shown on the sidebar of our document, HTML document. Now you would see here in our aside element, we do have here the nav element, usually used for navigation, website navigation. We have the UL element, which is the child element of the nav element. And in this case, it's an unordered list. So when we talk about list, guys, we have two kinds of lists. We have ordered list and unordered list. The UL tag or unordered list, these are usually in bullet form list, and each item is going to have an LI tag or list item tag. Or here we can see that this is a LI opening tag and a closing tag, and this is the element content. And ordered list will have the same format. We just replace the UL with OL, and this will be showing us an ordered list that will be displayed with a numbered list. So let's go and try to implement this in our blog post articles here inside of our div element blog post. And what I want to do here is to go and inside of our, just on top of our header here, I would want to go and put our aside element, and I'm going to put an h3 element here. You can actually put this here. Let's see how that will look. And I'm going to call this story categories, and I'm going to use an ordered list, or let's say first all ordered list first, guys. Let's go and use an ordered list, so at least you'll have an idea. And here I'm going to go and li multiplied by 4. This can be another feature, or this is another feature of our Visual Studio Code here. I'm going to type here HTML, CSS. You will see it automatically generated 4 list items for us. And I'm going to use JavaScript here, JavaScript, and cybersecurity. Let's see how that will look on our browser here. And that will be in our blog post articles, and it's there now. And again, this doesn't have any styling yet. You would notice, guys, that nothing's appearing here for the list. So perhaps what we can do here, because we have removed the margin and the padding, so what we can do here is go to our code editor here, then go back up the about styling section. Then I'm going to go and select the aside element selector, and I'm going to give this a float right property. Let's see how that will look on our browser. And now it's here on the right side because we floated the element to the right side. Okay, we can add some padding here. Let's add a padding of 2 rem, and let's see how that will look first. And there we go. We have that a bit of padding or white space on our aside element here. We can add and target the list element by doing this, guys. Aside ul and li, or I'm going to replace the ol here, and I would want it to be a ul or unordered list, because we would want to go and style this later on. I don't want it to be an ordered list. Instead, we would want it to be an unordered list. So we will see bullets instead of numbers. And what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to target the aside element and its child element ul and its li element. And now I'm going to add a padding of 1 rem. Let's see how that will look. And there we go. We now have story categories on the sidebar of our blog post articles. Perhaps I could go and replace these story categories with, let's see here. I'll call this tutorial categories. I think that's more appropriate for our sample site here. So here are some of the things that you can do with the unordered list, guys. You can actually use it for website navigation, and usually we can use CSS to style it and then float it to the right or left so that it will be displayed in line, and we can apply background color and styling using CSS. And as far as HTML goes, it usually is just a simple list. Now let's go back to our code editor here, and let's just go down our header section here, and I would want to go and add here div.nav. So I'll create a div element that will contain a navigation element that we will be positioning later on. So before we go and use the nav element, I would want to go and create a list here, and I would want to have at least 4 lists, li times 4, and I would want to put here home, about, contact, and let's go and put here Twitter, for example. And from here, guys, I'm going to give this a class name, perhaps of nav list. So at least we can target it using CSS. And now that we have the UL here, we can actually play around with this. What I want to do next here, everyone, is to go and target the li element using the class name nav list. So let's go to our header section, and I'm going to go and target the nav list. I'm going to give it a property of float left, and I want to remove the bullets, but let's first see here how that will look on our browser. You would see there it is, guys. It's floated left. That's why it's up there. And as of now, let's just go and add some padding to the top and bottom and right and left. So let's go and add padding 2%, top and bottom 2% for left and right. Let's just see how that will look. You would see here that the list items that we have here for the UL element is now floated left, and it has padding on the top, on the right, and on the left, and at the bottom here. And you will see that the heading element or H1 element, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6 here are just going with the flow depending on how we wrote our code, our markup here in our code editor here, guys. You would see that based from the instructions that we have given the computer, this is the first element, then the second element, the nav element here, then the UL heading 1, heading 2, heading 3. And that's why the reason why this is going to the left side of just beside the Twitter tab here, or the Twitter list item that we have here, is because we maximize the use of the, let's just go here, the float left property, and it's floating our element, specifically the list items, to the left side of the browser. And if I go and try to remove this, you would see this is based from the instructions that we have given the browser in our code, line by line. However, we played around with the property of the nav list item. This is the class name that we have given the list items here, and we targeted all of the list items. That's why they are all floated to the left side. Now what I want to do here is go to our code editor, and then I would want to wrap our heading here to a div element so that we can go and position it. So I'm going to call this div or header heading, and this one we can actually call this header nav. Now I'm going to go and put all of this here. Control X, Control V. I'm going to delete all of this, or let's just go and comment it out for the meantime, and replace this with our main heading, HTML cheat sheet template. Now let's go back to our browser here, refresh. Now we have that there. Now I want to position this, instead of it being on the left side or on the right side of the Twitter list item here, I would want to put it in the middle. So let's go and try to play around with some of the CSS properties of this element. Now let's go to our CSS here, and here's the H1, everyone. And what I want to do here is to go and just above that, header, heading, and from here I want to give it a property of position absolute, and then we'll have a top property of 50%, left side 50%. Let's just see how that will look first on our browser. And there we go. We now have the property change. That's why it's now here on the middle side, guys. And it's targeting actually the top 50% and the left side 50% here. But that's not what we want. So we would want it to be in the middle of the element. So we can go and maximize the use of the property translate here and transform property, and we would want to translate X and Y. So we can go and give it a negative 50%. This is just one of the techniques on how you can center some elements in your site, guys. So in this case, we wanted this to be centered. So now it's targeting 50%. Negative 50% was deducted from our initial values for, let me just open again here the top property here, and 50% left property, and it targeted the left side of the element here. And now that we have placed a transform translate negative 50%, now it's negative 50% from the inside of the element, and another negative 50% from the left side, and negative 50% from the top side. Now let's just go and perhaps remove the background color here, and then let's give font size of 5 rem here, and text shadow of 5 pixels, 5 pixels, 5 pixels, and black. Just so at least we will be able to go and see some layout changes in our HTML cheat sheet template here. I also want to go and remove the styling here for the bullets. So let's go and target our nav list here, and I want to go and target the list style type, and I don't want any bullets or style for the list item. So let's go and try to go, and there we go. We now have a navigation that looks a lot like a navigation, unlike when there are some bullets on the side, on the left side of the list items that we have here. Now let's go back to our markup here, and I just want to go and nest our UL here inside of a nav element. Let's talk about the nav element, everyone. Let's just go and format this. And let me just go back to my slide here, just to give you an idea of some keynotes when it comes to using the nav element. So it says here, the nav tag defines a set of navigation links. Remember that not all links of a document should be inside a nav element. That's why we didn't actually place the aside element content, specifically the list item there's in the nav element. And it is intended only for major block of navigation links, guys. Another thing to take note is that screen readers for disabled users uses this element to determine on whether to omit the initial rendering of this content. So that's the nav element, everyone. This is a semantic element, meaning here we do have the header nav div, but that doesn't have any semantic meaning. The nav element here will tell the screen readers that this is a navigation inside of our header element here. Now, let's talk about the anchor tag. This will be defining a hyperlink. This is used for us to be able to link from one page to another. So it has the href attribute of the anchor tag, indicates the link's destination. The default appearance of links are as follows. An unvisited link is underlined in blue. A visited link is underlined in purple. An active link is underlined and red. Now we can go and use the anchor tag here, because we want to create some links in our document here. So let me just go and type anchor tag here, or A, and it automatically generated here for us an href attribute. And I'm just going to go and use the sharp character here. So that's just signifies that this is a placeholder for a possible link in the future. And I would want to go and transfer all of this. Let's just go and get the home here. Control X, Control V. Then let's just let's perhaps just go and try to delete this, and just complete the about, the contact, and the Twitter. Let's format this, and let's see how this will look now on our browser. Let's refresh. You would see it's colored blue, everyone, because as we've talked about, unvisited link is underlined in blue, a visited link is underlined in purple, and an active link is underlined in red. Perhaps we can go and change the background color of our header here. Let's see, pale golden rod, if that will look a lot better, and it will show us how it looks better here. So home, about, contact, Twitter. Let's go and remove the underline here. So let's go and try to target the anchor element inside of the nav list class name. So let's go here. We have the nav list, and we know that the anchor element is nested in the list item. So we can go and use this format, nav list, and then the element selector for the anchor tag. And then let's go and remove the text decoration. These are CSS, guys. I just want to show you this, so at least it will look like an actual site already. So you would see there, guys, we were able to remove the underline here. And let's go and also try to go back here, and let's go and increase the font size at least 1.5 rem. Let's go back here, refresh, and there we go. At least it's looking a lot more like a static site now already, guys. Not that good looking, it's not that aesthetically great. However, it's already like a static site from where you can add some additional more content using HTML and CSS. And we can improve on the layout perhaps after we're done with some of the other elements that I would want to discuss in our crash course here. Now everyone, let's go and talk about HTML attributes. So it says here, these are special words used inside the opening tag to control the element's behavior. All HTML elements can have attributes, and it will be providing information or additional information about the elements. They are always specified in the starting tag, and they usually come in value pair format, and that's you having the attribute name and then the value of that attribute. So if we go back to our code editor here, you would see that we have the HTML language attribute that specifies the language that is going to be used for this document, which is EN or English. There are some other values for the language attribute that you can specify here depending on your location or the location of your target visitors for your site. Now let's go and talk about the target attribute of the anchor tag, and here's the format for that. We have the attribute name, which is target, and the value will be the underscore word blank inside of the quotation marks here. And this will be opening a new tab for us and prevents the user from having to leave our site. We usually maximize the use of the target attribute, especially if we will be redirecting our viewers to an external site. And we don't do this if, for example, we're just going to be navigating within our website. We just don't want different tabs to be opening up when we are just navigating inside of our website, especially if it's a landing page that we are building from where we don't want to confuse our visitors to go to different links. And instead, we want our visitors to be checking out the information in just a single page from where they can go and try to figure out if the services or the products that we are offering are the ones that they will be needing to solve their problems. Let's go back to our code editor here. Let's go down to our navigation. And I would want to use the target attribute here in our Twitter link. And I'm going to put here blank. And I'm going to put here in the href hyperlink attribute or href attribute the link to twitter.com. So we can actually go and try to remove this home here. And let's see how this will work in our site here. So if I go and click on here, you would see it redirected us to Twitter, to the home page of Twitter. But still, we are still here in our website, and it just opened up a new tab. If we go and try to remove the target attribute here, Let's see what will happen. Let me save that and go back to our site here and click on Twitter. Let's first refresh it, of course. You would see it redirected us to Twitter, and we had to leave our site. So that's the difference if we go and specify the target attribute, everyone. If we don't want our visitors to leave our site, we can just go and use the target attribute here, blank, so that the site from where we are redirecting our viewers to, for example, in this case, the twitter.com, it will just be opening up on a new tab. And we normally use the target blank if this is going to be a URL to an external site, and it will not be a hyperlink to a section of our page or to another part of our website. Now, if for example, we want to go and create a link to a section of our page on the same page, within the same page, meaning we will not be opening a new page. Instead, it will be on the same document. Right now, we have just one document, and we would want to go and redirect our visitors to the About section of this HTML index.html document. What we can do here is maximize the use of the ID selector. This just means that it's going to be a unique name for a specific section of our page or for a specific element. So let's say here we have the div class about, and I'm going to give this an ID attribute of about also. So this means that this name, this can be any name that you would want to go and call this. This can be customized. And right now, we specified the ID attribute so that this will be a unique name that we can go and target and reference if ever we would want to play around with this div element. So if for example, we go to our anchor tag here and we go and reference that ID using the sharp character here. Let's put a sharp character here. If it will be inside of our anchor tag here, inside of our attribute, href attribute. You will see we have class names that can target multiple elements, in this case, the different list items that we have here. However, this ID is going to be unique in our document. That's why we have used this reference here for the About ID section div element that we have here. Okay, so again, ID for giving a unique name for an element. Classes attribute or class attributes are used to target multiple elements. Now, if we go back to our browser here and refresh this, and if I go and click on the About hyperlink here, the anchor tag or the anchor element with the element content that contains the word about, if I click on this, it will redirect us to the About page section of our page. And if you look at the URL here, guys, you would see that it appeared here, the ID about. So that's how you go and create hyperlinks to different sections of your page, guys. So for example, this contact page, and I would want to go and link that to our footer. I can go and create a footer ID here, go to our footer section, and give this a ID of footer, so that this will be serving as the reference to that ID that we have specified, or this ID will be the reference in our navigation, that once we go and click on our navigation here, and this is going to be a unique name that we have given in our anchor tag, so that we can go and target the footer section for us to be able to go and get some contact information. So if I go back to our browser here and refresh this, let's see what will happen. We were redirected to the footer section here. As you can see here, guys, you would see that we have here the ID footer that we named our footer element for us to be able to target it once we use a hyperlink. Now let's go and talk about the article element, everyone. You would see here that it can be used to specify self-contained content, and the article element can make sense on its own, and it should be possible to distribute it independently from the rest of the site. And some of the potential sources or use of the article element can be through using it for forum posts, blog posts, news stories, and so on. Just take note, the article element doesn't really have any special rendering in the browser. However, we can go and style it using the cascading style sheet or CSS. Now let's go back to our code here, and I want to go to our blog post section here, and below the aside element I would want to go and put here some article elements. So I would want to go and type article times 2, and let's just go and inside of this article elements I would want to go and put an h3, and I'm going to call this blog post 1, and here let's also put an h3, a header or a heading, h3 heading blog post 2. I also want to go and put inside of our article element here an image. Now I can go and show you here, guys, that we can actually go and try to, instead of having a local file in our local machine, we can also go and maximize the use of links. So if I go to our tab here, computer science free images, you would see that we can go and get some free images like this. And if we go and try to open this, open in a new tab, there's the image. Let's also go get another one, and that's here. We can also do the same process, open image in new tab, and you will see here I actually got the images already here, the links to those. So let's go and copy that. You will see that if I go and paste that here, and the other one, I'm going to paste this one here. I want another image here. Paste that other one here. And go back to our site here. And you will see that we now have our images that we got from the internet through the use of a direct link. So we maximize the use of a direct link instead of using an image that is stored in our local machine, in our local directory. So take note of that, everyone. That's also possible. So let's just go and give this some attributes: width of 100 pixels and height of 100 pixels. We can actually also do this, but you can also use again the use of the CSS cascading style sheets. Instead of using attributes, you can go and directly change the properties of these images. But for now, I want to go and just make it easy for us. Height 100 pixels. Let's see how that will look in our browser. Refresh. And there we go. We now have some images for our blog post 1 and our blog post 2. And we can also specify some alternate text here in case there's internet connection or there's no internet connection connectivity. So we can see here computer science image, and here we can go and alternate text networking cable or RJ45 images. Okay, everyone, so in this next slide, let's talk about the block quote element, the abbreviation element, and the cite element. So we can see here that the block quote element, we can go and define a section that is quoted from another source. And usually this will be indented. Browsers will be indenting the content of the block quote element. And the abbreviation element is used for defining abbreviations or acronyms like, for example, Cisco Certified Network Associate, we have here CCNA, or HTML Hypertext Markup Language, CSS Cascading Style Sheets. And here we have the site Circulo song, original song written by me. I wrote that song. So we can go and maximize the use of that tag, the site tag that defines the title of a creative work, like for example, a book, a poem, a song, a movie, a painting, a sculpture, and so on. Just take note that once we use the site tag, this will usually be rendered as italic. Now let's go back to our code editor here. And let's just go and just below the article element, I would want to go and place a block quote element. And I'm just going to go and put this here, and I'm going to cite that, let's say for example, this came from https www.rodprogramdev-pintigLaro.wordpress.com, and I would want to go and maximize the use of this content here for Computer Talk 101. So let's go and copy this, and I'm going to put that here and paste that here. Let's go and try to format the document, HTML language here, and let's save that. Let's see how that will look on our browser. And now we have some text for our blog post one here. Now let's go and copy this, everyone. I'm still going to go and have this as a block quote to as an example for just for example purposes, guys. I'm going to cite my blog here in rodprogramdev.com, and I'm going to go and type here a blog that I'm planning to write in the future for CCNA. Let's go and try to format this, and let's go and save this and then go back to our browser here. Now we have our text for our blog post too. Now let's go and add an ABBR tag here for us to be able to abbreviate the CCNA acronym here. I'll put that in between the ABBR tag and assign the value of Cisco Certified Network Associate. So that's where we can go and maximize the use of the ABBR tag. Now let's go and talk about HTML tables. And for definition, it allows us to arrange data into rows and columns. Table headers are defined by the TH element. Table data cell is defined with TD, and table rows are defined by TR. So we can see here the different elements that we can go and work on in creating a table. During the old days, everyone, tables are used for layouting the design of our website, but that is not recommended anymore. We should be using CSS for layout purposes, and we should only be using tables for tabular data content. Even though this is a rule that will not be enforced by the browser, just take note it's better to do things the right way rather than the wrong way. So again, make sure that you will be using tables only for tabular data content. Now let's go back to our code editor here, go down our table section, and let's go and put a table here. And inside of that, I'm going to go and put a table head, T head, that will contain the header inside of our web document. So we have a table row that will contain a table header that will involve goals. So perhaps we can go and type here th multiplied by 5. So here we have the T head that specifies the header section of our table, the TR which specifies the row of our table, and TH will be specifying the table headers for each of the rows or for each of the columns that we will be creating for each of the data cells that we will be creating later on. So what I want to do here is to add some content here, target, start date. I also want to go and target end date. Let's go and put here reminders and remarks. So here we would want to add another section to our table, and that's where we will place the T body. So technically we're just defining the sections of our table here. That's why we have a T head, T body, and we can even put a T foot here for the table footer. Let me just go and inside of our T body here, we also want to go and put a TR tag for the table row. So but before that, guys, let's just go back to our site here and let's see what's currently happening. So we can see here that this is the value for our TH element, which is the, let me just see here, let's go down here. If I go down here and let's see the table section. We have here the table section, table, div. We have our table, T head, and TR. Let's see what's the value for that. And let's see fonts. We have 16 pixels, 400 font weight for the TR, TH. You would see the font weight is 700. That's why it's in bold, guys. The font weight of our T header or TH tags here, the opening and closing TH tags. And we can see here that it's in a row, meaning from the left to the right. Now, if we want to go and add some table data cells, we can go and try to go here and add a TD on the second row. And let's say I would want to travel to US, visit my sister. So that's the table data cell. And if we go back to we can see here in our browser, the goal now has the travel to US. No spacing yet, no styling yet. That's why it doesn't look good. But technically, we can see here now that we have created a column from the TH here, the table row TR that contains all of the TH elements here. And now we have here the second row that contained the TR, that contained the table data cell or TD content. Now, if we go back to our code editor here, and we create more table rows here, let's go change the content here to upskilling through certifications, just as another goal. And we also have here study Japanese language. For example, I want to learn how to speak Japanese language, or study Japanese language. Let's save that and let's go back to our browser. Let's see how that will look. Now you would see we now have our first column. We don't have any table columns or elements for table columns, but we can maximize the use of table rows and table data cells to add columns into our table. So if we go and try to go back to our code here and add some more content here, let's say a table data cell on our second column. Let's go and copy this and type here, let's say, for example, we know that we would want this to be aligned on target start date. So let's go and type here, let's say November 9, 2022. I want to go to US, and that will be the starting date. And I would want to end that on November 30, 2021. And I would want to go and add another TD here. Let's first see how that will look already in our browser. And there we go. We are adding some table content on our second row. Okay. On the horizontal, manner or in a horizontal manner. Okay, so we can see here is we go back here and we add one more. Let's just type here. I would want to go here based from the reminders. Go visit my sister's house. My sister's house. And here, let me just go and type here. I would want to go and eat apples all day and play. Okay, so that will be one of our set of goals here. Let's see here. So there we go, guys. We now have our first column, second column, third column, uh, fourth column, and fifth column. Okay, let me just go and add some more content here. So at least it will look more like a table already, guys. So at least four columns here. So you will see if I added another table row here that contained the information here. Travel to Japan by manga November 9, 2021, November 30, 2021. So let's go and refresh that. And there we go. We have one first row, second row, third row, fourth row, and we still have some empty columns here because we haven't added any table data cells yet in this sections. You will see that it's occupying the space of the table data content. Everyone, you will see that the table here is increasing its space based from the data content of the table data cell. So let's just go and add some more content just for us to really see how it will look like. So I'm just going to add here some content that is related to our table headers here. I'm just going to copy and paste this, everyone. Let's form a document with HTML features. Let's save that. Let's go back to our browser and there we go. We now have our goals. First column, target start date, target end date, reminders, and some remarks. Now let's go to our table styling section here on our CSS just to go and apply a little bit of styling. Later on, we'll be doing some styling perhaps, so at least this will look a lot more like a site, guys. But as I've told you guys, this is not a CSS course. Let me just change the background color to white. Let's go to our code editor here or to our browser. There we go. Now let's go to our table here, and I would want to target this H2, and I'm going to give it a class of table heading, and I would want to apply some styling to that table heading. So let's go back here. Where's that table? And let's target the table heading. And let's have the text align property. Text align. This will be centering the text in our table heading. And margin to rem. Let's see how that will look on our browser. We can see here that we have an extra 2 rem margin here, everyone. That's why we are seeing the body elements background color, the pale golden rod. And don't worry too much about that. We'll work on that as we go along with our discussions here. So for now, let's go and try to apply some changes to our TD table data cells and TH. We can target two element selectors in this case, guys. So let's go and try to add a padding of 1 rem and margin of 5 pixels. Pixels is another unit, guys. It's a fixed unit. So let's go and 1 pixel solid hexadecimal D. So let's go and go back to our browser here, and let's see here. We now have a table that is much better looking. We have the table header, th, element that contains the following headers. We have each of the table data cells that is in between the td closing and opening and closing tags, and we have the tr that contains all of the td elements inside of it. We have the table row 1, table row 2, table row 3, table row 4. So at least now we have our table looking much better. Now let's go and talk about forms in HTML, everyone, and we can go create some user input from where we can go and get some information coming from our users. And it can contain the following elements such as the label element, input, text area, button, select, option group, of group elements or tags. And just take note that with HTML, we can go and create forms. However, it will not be adding any functionality to the form just by using HTML. Usually, if we would want to create a login form, we can build an actual form using HTML. But to actually have that form function from where we will be sending the information to a server, we will need a programming language like PHP for dynamic functionality. Okay, so let's go back to our code editor here, and let's go down our form section. I believe that's already here, and we have the div form here. Let's go and put a form tag here and an action attribute. Let's go and talk about action attribute later on. But for now, I would want to go and put a label and input element inside of our form tags. Let's talk about the label element here. Let's go to our slide here. So the label tag, guys, the format here will be the opening label tag, closing label tag. You will see we have the first name, the last name, and remember that the for attribute of label must be equal to the ID attribute of the related element to bind them together. A label can also be bound to an element by placing the element inside the label element. Some key things to take note of when using the label element is that we can define a label for several elements such as checkbox, email or input email with the type value of email, input with the type value of checkbox, and so on. So when we use labels properly, we can go and make sure that screen reader users will be benefiting from it because this will be reading out loud the label when the user is focused on the element. And it will also be helping out those people who are having a difficulty clicking on small regions of your website. So some tips and notes here, guys. If ever you will be using the label, you will need to maximize the use of the ID attribute of the related element to bind them together. Now let's go and try to apply that. So we have here the for label attribute. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and type our customer name. And as I've said, this is what we call the camel case. Let me just go to our slide here. Now, if we try to go and read through the presentation here, it says that this is a customized name for a variable that developers use with a small letter and the next word is a capital letter. So we can say that this is customized, meaning you're the one who created the name and it's not a keyword in the programming language. If you're working with a programming language from where you will need to create a variable that you will be using for helping you identify what that specific variable is used for. Going back here, we need to go and maximize the use of the ID attribute so that we can go and bind this to the label element that we have made here. So I'm going to go and bind it using the customer name. So let's just go and put name here and semicolon or a colon here. And you will see the for attribute value is customer camel case name. Okay, customer name, and we now have both of this related to one another by specifying this customer name. If we go back to our code here and go down here and let's refresh that, we can now see that we have the label that we have specified here and an input type text element as we have written here in our code. We should also include here the name attribute, everyone, inside of our input element, and we can go and put different forms of values to our type attribute here. And remember, the input tag will be specifying an input field from where your user will be entering data in your website. We go and maximize the use of the attribute name here so that if we are going to submit the user data to our server, or let's say, for example, to a PHP file, we will be able to grab that information or that data through the use of the name attribute here. And this will serve as the reference for us to be able to go and submit the value of our input tag to our server. Okay, so we maximize the same values here, the ID, the name attribute, and the for. So the for attribute used to bind the label element here to another element, which is the input element, and we maximize the use of the ID element here so that this will serve as the reference for this, and the name attribute will be used for us to be able to target and submit information to our PHP file or to our web server or to a server from where information is stored. And the type attribute here will be specifying the type of input tag that we will be using for gathering information or data from our users. And in this case, we maximize the use of the text value, and that's why we have here a text input tag or input element that shows the ability for us to go and input some text. So I hope that you understand that the name attribute is used for connecting to the database. The type attribute specifies the type of input tag that will be displayed on our screen. This can be a button, type checkbox, type color, date, date time, email, file, image, password, radio, and so on. Okay. Another keynote to take here, guys, is that let's go and look for our label element here and see the display inline. It's inline, and the input tag here is inline block. Okay, so those are the properties here that they will be only taking up the width that that elements takes up. And usually we go and wrap them in a div because div elements are block level elements that we can go play around with when it comes to positioning and applying some layout design for us to be and also for us to be able to put them in the next line if ever we would want to go and um, position them one line after the other, or let's say in a new line. So let's go back to our code editor here and let's go create another label, and we'll be putting the element content email and input type email and name attribute of email, and let's have here an ID of email, and of course we would want to also go and put email here. Let's see how this will look on the browser. Let's save that, and you would see it's inline on a single line, guys. That's what I'm talking about when we say we are using inline and inline block. And if ever we would want to go and create a line break, we can maximize the use of the div element, or we can maximize the use of the line break tag. So let me just show you here. The BR tag, everyone, is used for inserting a single line break in a text, and it is very useful for writing addresses or poems, for example. And this is an empty tag. You would see that we don't need to have a closing tag for this. It doesn't have an end tag, and when we are using the br tag, we should be using this to enter a line break and not to add space between paragraphs, guys. Okay, take note of that because that's something that you should consider. We usually maximize the use of properties in CSS if we would want to add some spaces between elements. But for now, because we just want to add some layout design to our site, I'm going to break that rule. I just want to go and use a line break here. Uh, let's see how that will look. And you will see we were able to create a line break for our name label tag here. But that's not where I would want to put the line break. We actually want the line break. Let me just go back here. And let's make it 2 line breaks. And there we go. We now have a line break for our name, label, element, and the input tag for the name, label, element. And we have the email here and the input tag here, label, email tag, and the input email tag. And we also want to add some more. Let's see here, guys. Let's go back to our code editor here. Let me just go and put uh, some line breaks also here. Now let's go and try to go and add another label here. Label. And this will be for birthday. Or let's say for birthday. And let's go and birthday input element type will be date and name will be birthday. Assign the value of birthday and ID will be birthday. I think I made a typo here, so this should be birthday. And let's see how that will look on our browser. And there we go. We now have birthday on our browser. One thing that we would want to go and add here will be a placeholder text. So let's go and talk about the placeholder attribute for input type or the input type element. So before, guys, before HTML5, developers usually use the value attribute. Let's say enter first name here, and then from there we can go and maximize the use of JavaScript to make this go away. Now in HTML5, we just need to go and use the placeholder attribute, and that will automatically be done, and it will be recognized by the browser, and it will display here the placeholder text on the inside of the input element. So let's go and try to apply that. So let's see here. Let's go to our customer name here, and let's go and put here a placeholder attribute that will be specifying here. We can call this enter your name here. Enter your name here. And if we go back to our browser, you would see that there it is. And we don't need to work with JavaScript anymore to play around with this to make it dynamic, that if we click on it and we go and try to write, it automatically goes away. So you would see that it automatically goes away once we type text inside of our input type text element here or input element here. So we can also go and try to apply that in our email address. We can actually try to use placeholder here, placeholder email, or enter your email here. Let's see how that will look here. Refresh, and there we go. We can say rodprogramdev@gmail.com. And here, if we go and click on here, it opens for us a dynamic calendar. Okay, and now let's go back to our code editor here. Let's maximize the use of the text area element, and we can go and create a label for this also. A label for comment, comment, and of course the ID and name will be called comment also. The ID here, comment. And if we go and try to look at the browser, you will see that we now have our comment text area here. So just take note guys, the text area tag will be defining a multi-line text input control, and it is often used in a form so that users can input comments or reviews. And the size of the text area depends on the columns and rows attribute that we have here. We can go and increase it if you want. You can make it 40. Let's look at how that will look on our browser. You would see this is going to be specifying the visible width of the text area, and the row will be, let's go back to our code here. If I go and increase this into 20, let's see how that will look on our browser. It will increase the visible number of lines in a text area. Now for the next element that we would want to play around with here is let me just create another break here, or 2-line breaks here. I'm just going to put this back to 30 and 10. Let's just go and check here. By the way guys, you can actually play around with this. You can increase it by dragging your mouse. Once you click on this, hold it and you can drag it. So, but once you refresh the browser, it will go back to the normal size that you have specified in the call and row attributes. And now let's go and talk about the select tag. So you would see here the format guys for the select tag, and it shows here that we have the label element that should be associated with the select tag, and the options that are available for that select tag element. Okay, so we need to put here the for attribute and the ID attribute so that this will be bind together, the label and the select tag here. So some things to take note of when you are using the select tag, everyone, is that it will be creating a drop down list in our website, and it is usually used in a form to collect user input. And let's say here I'm going to specify gender, and our select tag here will be gender and attribute will be gender. Okay, and from here we can go and try to um, in between the opening and closing select tag, we will be using the option tag so that we can go and specify male, another option tag, female, and we have option tag here for others. So we can go and specify in the attribute value male, so female, and others. Others. So if we go and try to refresh our browser here, there we go. We now have a drop-down list here. Some additional info guys with regards to the select tag. We always should be adding the label tag so that that is considered to be as a practice or best accessibility practice by developers. That's what the documentation recommends. And take note guys, if we do not specify the name attribute, no data from the drop-down list will be submitted to the server or to the PHP file database from where you would want to submit the information here. Now let's go and try to have a input type submit with the name value of submit and with the value of submit, attribute of submit. So in this case, we didn't use any label. Instead, we maximize the use of the value submit here. So if we go back to our browser, you would see there it is. There's a value inside of the input type and the text submit is inside of it. So take note guys that the value attribute specifies the value of an input element. In this case, we have the submit value attribute that we specified here. The value of the value attribute is submit. That's why it defines the text on the button. Okay. And now let's proceed to putting a line break here so that we'll have some space here. And there we go. So some other information here, guys, is that the submit value here for the input type submit will be defining a submit button that will be submitting form values to a form handler. And this is typically a server page with a script for processing the input data. And this form handler is usually specified in the form's action attribute. When you say action attribute, guys, this is going to submit the form to a certain page. It will be specifying where to send the form data when a form is submitted. So let's go back to our code here and then go to our form action attribute here. So in our case, I just want to go and let's say here action attribute will be mail to rodprogramdev@gmail.com. And I would want to specify the method attribute of we have get or post, guys. So when we say method attribute, this will be either post or get. This is related to the HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, which is designed to enable communications between clients and servers. The two most common HTTP methods are get and post, guys. And the method attribute will be specifying how to send form data, and the form data is sent to the page specified in the action attribute. So this can be a PHP file, or like what we did here, we specified here an email. So we can use post or get here, guys. The recommended value here, guys, for the HTTP method is the post method, especially if we want it to be secured, because this will be more secure than the get method, and this is usually used for us to be able to go and make a post request to the server, which will be adding data to the database. And get method, on the other hand, if we submit this using the get method or the information or the data that we've gathered using a get method, it will be seen on the URL, and that's not, or in the URL, and that's not really recommended. That's okay if it will be for situations from where you will be searching for information and you're not adding sensitive information to the server. However, if you are planning to go and send data to the server using the method attribute that we have here, and you're going to send sensitive data like passwords or important information, we should not be using get because that is not secured. Okay, it will be shown in the URL of the site, and this has more to do with server-side programming, guys, so we won't be talking too much about this, but just to take note of that, guys. Post more secured, get will be shown on the URL, so it's not that secure. Now let's go and go back to our browser here, refresh it, and let's say we go and submit this. You would see it's opening already a mail to link. We can now go and open link to Gmail, Yahoo Mail, depending on um, the email that you're using. Now let's go and talk about the horizontal rule tag, everyone. And this will be representing a thematic break between paragraph level elements. Let's say, for example, there will be a change of scene in a story, a shift topic within a section. So we can go and try to implement this here in our blog post here. Let's go and try to place that just below the block quote element, and let's go put an HR tag there. Now let's go and try to see how that will look. And there we go. We now have that horizontal rule here. So it doesn't look good yet, guys, because again, we haven't applied any CSS here or any aesthetics. But so far, it's already looking like a static website that have some information, but we need to do some positioning so that we can go and improve on how this website will look. Now let's go and work on the footer section here. And just some information about the footer tag, guys. This will be defining a footer for a document or a section. So usually this will be containing authorship information, copyright information, contact information, sitemaps, and back to top links and related documents, guys. So if we go back to our footer section here, what I would want to do here is to go and add some footer content. So let's go and put a div that footer contact element here. So we'll have a div element that will be containing a UL element with a list of at least 5 list items. And I would want to go and use H3 here to say contact information, for example, guys. And then here I'll go Facebook, your Facebook page. And here let's have Twitter, your Twitter account. Let's also go and add Instagram, your Instagram account. Let's have here our Discord server, your Discord server, and your email. So you can put here your personal information, everyone, at gmail.com, for example. Now we also want to go and add another div here that will be containing the footer credits. And inside of that, we will be having our copyright. So let's say, let's have our paragraph and we have our copyright term here. And we will be using HTML entities. And when we say HTML entities, this will be replacing reserved characters in HTML. In this case, we have an example here, less than and greater than symbols in our content, element content text. And the format will normally be the end character just above the 7 or the number 7 on our keyboard, and then the entity name, or the end character, and then the sharp character here, and then the entity number. So for the copyright symbol, we can maximize the use of the format here. We have the end character and then the copy word, and here we have the number 169. Now let's go and try to apply that here. Let's have copy. Let's just check our browser here. Let's refresh. And nothing's appearing here because perhaps of the font color that we need to specify for our footer here. So I'm going to target the footer P element. Let me just go down here. Footer P element. And I would want to change the color of that to white. Or we can actually go and try to target the whole footer for this, guys, so that the child elements will be inheriting the font color of the parent element, which is the div element with a class name of footer. Okay, and I would want to specify the font size for this, and it will be 0.8 rem. Let's see how that will look on our browser. And there we go, guys. We have our copyright symbol here. We'll need to arrange the layout. Let's just go and add some content here. Let's say 2021 Rodrigo Bonzer S. Lopez HTML template. It's completely okay for you to use this template, and let's go credit to the owner will be highly appreciated. Now let's go back to our browser here, refresh that, and there we go. We have the 2021 content here. Let's add some padding here, guys. Let's go back to our CSS here and add at least padding of 2 rem, just so that we can go and see the list items. And we would want to go and put this footer credits on the right side. So what I'll do here, go back to our code editor here. I'm going to target the footer contact, and I'm going to give this a float left property and a margin right of 15%. Let's refresh, and there we go. And let's remove the list style type items here. So we would want to go and target the footer contact list style type property. We would want to remove that, and of course we would want to target the child element of that, which is the child element, also the target the UL child element, which are the list items. Now let's go back to our browser here, refresh, and there we go. We now have removed those bullets. So you would see that it looks like a website already. We have different sections, we have images, but it doesn't look good because we haven't yet applied any CSS. And now, guys, I just want to go and tackle another tag, and that's the link tag. So when we say the link tag, this will be a tag that will be defining relationships between the current document and an external source. And usually this is often used to link to external style sheets. And the link element is an empty element and contains attributes only. Now let's go and use the link tag for us to be able to go and maximize the use of Google Fonts. You just search Google Fonts, guys. These are free fonts that you can go and maximize and use in your project. Now I just want to go and select the Lato font here, and I'm going to select regular 400 here. You would see that we can add more styles, but in this case I just want to copy this link relation tag here with the attribute relations, or the link that was generated by Google font here. And let's go back to our code here, and let's go on top, and just below our title tag I'm going to go and put that link tag, the 2 link tags that were generated by Google font automatically. And let's also get the format for the font family. We can choose font family for our site here. If we actually check the font family of our site here right now, go to computed value, and you would see that if we go to the body tag here, fonts, it's using the default value of my browser, which is Courier and Tahoma. So we're going to change that. Let's go back to our code here and go and target the body element and paste the Lato font family. We have 2 values here, guys. You will see we have a comma here, just in case that this Lato font is not supported by a browser, the sans serif font here will be the one that will be rendered. And if we go back to our browser here, just take note guys, we have here a serif font. The Courier New is a serif font. You would notice that based from the corners of the font that we have here, it has some sort of design on the corners. But if we go and try to refresh this right now, you would see now the Lato font is more of a sans serif font, and there's no design on the corners of the font or the text or the characters. Okay, just for your information, guys. But those are more on the aesthetics or concept about design already, so we will not be tackling that in this course. Now, another thing that I want to do here is to go and use photos for each of the sections or specific parts of the sections. So we can go and use CSS for that. And I'll be just doing this quickly, everyone. I won't be talking too much about CSS, but I just want you to go and really code the things that we will be doing here, guys. That's why I won't be giving you the output, or let's say I won't be having you copy paste things, especially the code that we are doing here. So at least you will know what that specific property is doing. At least you will be learning by doing. You will see that if you go and try to implement some of the CSS properties that we will be doing here, at least you'll get an idea already on how that works and how that got rendered by the browser once we go and run through some CSS here. And again, this is not a CSS course, so I'll just be running through quickly in the code that we will be writing here, so that at least we will be able to go and apply some layout here and it will look a lot much better. Okay, next thing that I want to go and tell you to do is to go to sites that will provide you free photos like Unsplash here and Free Pick, from where you can get some free photos. Sometimes they're for free without the need for attribution. Sometimes you will find photos that needs attribution. However, you will be able to use this already in your portfolio projects. That's why I wanted to show you this site here. I actually already have the photos downloaded for me, but I just wanted to show you that what I did is that I looked for computer, the word computer, and I was able to find this logo here. And if you want to go and download this and use it without getting to buy it or to pay for it, you will need to go and give an attribution. So you'll need to copy this link here, and that's actually what I did. I just added some text here, so at least the viewers of the template will know that the header section is from PCH Vector, and the about page photo was created by PCH also, and the blog post photo was created by JComp, and the form photo will be coming from TiraCharge, freepic.com. Okay, so these are the photos that I'll be using for our project, guys. You can go and change the photos, guys, depending on how you did the layout for your page or for your project, guys. And as I've told you guys, be original. Try to use my crash course here as a guide for you to be able to create and be creative in creating your own design. And for now, I'm just showing you here the pictures that I'll be using. Okay, and here's another one, and here's another one. And you can change the photos here, guys. That's completely okay. As I've said, I don't want to limit the creativity of my students. I'm sure some of you might even be better when it comes to having the eye for design. That's why I recommend that don't limit yourselves. Maximize the use of the lessons that we are having here as a guide, and try to implement your own creativity. Okay? So let me just drag and drop the photos that I've downloaded. I'm going to put that here. There we go. So now I'm going to go to the header section and I'm going to change this background color, Control KC, to background image. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go and set the background image property, and I'm going to use the URL here, and I'm going to go and get the pch vector.jpg here, and I'm going to go and set the background size to cover. So technically, if you go and Control KC this, you would see that if we go back to our HTML cheat sheet here, you would see that the background is very big and it's not being shown here, guys, right? So let's go and try to set the background cover and refresh, and there we go. You would now see that it's covering the whole header section. Now let's go down to our about page here, and instead of the color pink here, I would want to go and apply here background image and URL, and I'm going to use the pch vector JPEG 2, and same deal, I'm going to go and give this a background position or background size cover. Let's see first how that will look. At least you'll see what's currently happening. And there we go. We now have that background in our second section. Okay. And if we go back to our code here, what I would want to apply, some properties here that I would want to apply is I would want to have the text align center. I will be adding some padding of 5 rem. And I will also be using the background position, and I'm going to give it a 100% negative 20% value. Okay, so let's just go and Control X this and put that here and save that. Let's see how that will look. And now we can see that the image here is now in the middle, but we don't want it to be in the middle. And I would want to go and apply some CSS also for that, just for layout purposes here. So let's go and hide this. And I would want to go and apply some other properties here. I'm going to make our image, my image, circle. So I'll be using the border radius property for that. And I would want to go and add some margin on the top of that element to rem. And I'm going to float it to the right. And if we go back to our browser here, we now have it here. Okay. I would want to go and reduce the image size, everyone. So let's go and make that 15 rem. Let's go back to our browser here. Let's see how that will look. And there we go. We now have a smaller circle here. Now let's go and increase the size of our H2. So let's go back up here because this is going to be a general H2. I just want to make it a little bit bigger. So let's go and font size 2.5 rem. Let's first see here how it will look. There we go. We have a bigger H2 here. Now let's go back down to our about page here or about section. And I don't want the aside elements to be inside the about styling section here. So we would want that to be under the blog post. And let's go and try to implement using the background image here. So let's go in background image URL, and we would want to use the jcomp hacker background size cover. I would want to have the text align property to the left. Font size would be 1 rem and color would be white. Now let's go and try to refresh this. So we have our about page, we have our blog post articles here. Let's go and try to work on our blog post articles here section. Let's go back to our code editor. Now let's go add a padding of 2 rem on all sides of our page here. So that will be from the top, left, right, bottom. I want to target the 2 images here. So we'll need to go back to our HTML here, down here, and we'll need to give this a class. So we have here blog post 2, blog post 1. So I'm going to give this a class of blog post img1, and let's have a class here, down here, so that we can target this img2. And then let's go back up here. Where's that? Okay, about blog post. Let's target now that class selector blog post img1, and I would want to give this a float left, margin right, 2 rem, and border radius of 50%. Let's go back to our browser, and now we have that image circled. So we'll still need to do some adjustments here. Now let's go back to our code editor here. Let's just copy this and let's give this a image2 value. Let's check how that will look. And now we need to move it down to this part or section. What I'm going to do here, guys, is I'm going to go to our block code element here below it. I'm going to go and give a break of times, line break of 5 times. Let's see how that will look. And there we go. We were able to put that down here. And also, let's go and try to also make some space by putting some line breaks also here. So let's make it at least 6 line breaks just to add some space for our elements here. But supposedly you should be using CSS for that, guys, not line breaks. Okay, I'm just doing that for us to be able to quickly do this. Now let's go adjust our block quote element here. Let's go back to our code editor, go back to our block quote element, block quote, and let's give this a display of inline block, width of 60%, and a padding of 0%, top and bottom 3% on left and right. Let's see how this will look. Okay, so you would see that it's now not overlapping on our below our aside element here. Now guys, let's try to go and add some padding in our header 3 here. Let's go to our blog post header 2, header 3. Perhaps we can target our 2 header 3 here. So let's go and give this a class of blog post heading or h3, just so that we will be h31, And just for purposes, at least we'll have some options here. H31, H32. Let's go up here and then let's play around with this. First, let's go and check padding 2 or 5% perhaps. Let's go see how that will look. That's too much. So let's go and try to test things out, guys. So at least 1% perhaps will be good. I think 1% will be a little too little. So this is where you will be testing things out, guys. If you're using CSS, 1%, okay. I don't want too much padding at the left side, so perhaps what we can do here is we can go and specify our padding. Top will be 2%, right will be 2%, bottom will be 2%, and left will be 0%. Let's see how that will look. And there we go. At least we now have it on the side here. Now let's go and try to copy this for our blog post H32. And then let's go back to our browser here, refresh, and there we go. I think it's a little too far from the top, so let's go and go back here. Let's reduce this to 0%. Let's see. And I think that's a lot much better. Let's go replace our titles here based from the blog that we've gotten or we have written here. Let's go and type here Computer Talk 101, Computer Talk 101, and here CCNA Internet of Things, CCNA Internet of Things. And just for the title, let's go back to our browser. Let's see. Okay, and I would want to reduce the size of our HR here, so let's go and target that. Let's go back to our blog post here, and let's target the HR element. Let's go give it a width of 56%, color of white. You can actually do that with the HR element, guys. Let's refresh. There we go. I also want to go and put just below here, guys. Let's go back to our code editor, our HTML here. At least it will look like as if we are, let's see here, we have the block code. Let's have an anchor tag here, and let's have a continue reading text here, and let's have a line break here. Let's see, let's just have that also just below the block code. Also, of course, a line break. And let's refresh. Now let's remove those things here, or the properties, the default properties. So let's go back to our code editor and let's target the blog post anchor tag here. Okay, so let me just go back to our code editor here, and let's go, just perhaps we can go and that's under blog post P. Actually, this is not needed. Don't need that. We have here blog post H3 HR. We can perhaps put that here. Blog post anchor tag A. Where's that? Now let's give it a margin left, or sorry, margin left of 3%, text decoration none, and color red. Let's save that. Let's go back to our browser here, and there we go. At least we now have a link if in case the reader wants to read more about this blog or blog post about Computer Talk 101 and CCNA Internet of Things. Now guys, let's go and work on our table information here, and let's go back to our code editor here, and I would want to make this 100 VH, and I would want to go and maximize the use of the end selector, and I'm going to go and give it a keyword of even. So just take note guys, this is a pseudo class selector. So a CSS pseudo class, everyone, is a keyword added to selectors that will be specifying a special state of the element that will be selected. So in this case, the nth child pseudo class selector that we have here, this will be matching elements based on their position in a group of siblings. Let's say, for example, here, this will select the second li element in a list. So that's why there's a 2 here inside of the argument or the parameter that is specified here in the opening and closing parentheses. And we have here another note. We can also use keyword values for the parameter. It can be odd or even. And if we go back to our code here, you would see that we use the even parameter here. Now let's go and apply a background color for that. Background color of DD, and let's save that. Let's go back to our site here and refresh. You would see here guys that we have here now an alternate of the background color of our table data cells here, from the second row here and up to the last row. Let's see here why this is still not yet occupying the full viewport. Let me just test this thing out guys. Let's go and select this. Oh, okay, so it's the heading that's causing it. So sometimes you will need to go and check out the developer tools guys for you to figure out what's currently happening. So one quick fix here guys, because I want the table section to be colored white, because sometimes guys you would see that the format of some sites will be white and then dark color, then a white or a background color that is a bit dark, and then a bit light again. So let's go and try to just go and go to our body selector here, and let's remove this guys, and then go back to our, or we can specify that as white. Control KC just to be sure guys, FFF, and go back to our table here, and there we go. We were able to solve that issue with the background color being yellow. And right now guys, the TR or the table row here that we targeted with the use of the nth selector is now different, or the background color is now different based from the value or the parameter that we have used, which is the even parameter. And if we do replace this with, go back down here, where's that? That's the table here, and let's turn this into odd just to show you guys that this is something that you would see now guys. It's targeting the odd numbers here, and it even targeted the heading section here, okay, or the, let's go back to our code just to the, let's look at the table section here, TR here guys. That's why it's also targeting the table header here, okay. So just to show you guys that this is odd and this is even, let's just add another TR here in the T head section of our table. So let's go back to our site here and let's refresh, and you will see here guys now that this is odd and this is even, and this is odd and this is even, this is odd and this is even. Now let's go back to our code and let me just remove this. Let's go back up here, table, and I'm going to target even, then refresh our browser here, and that will be fine for me now. Okay, now let's go down here in our subscribe section. I think I'll reduce the table VH here. Let's just keep it at 80, and then go back here, and there we go. It looks a lot better that way. Now let's go and add some styling for our form here. I would want to add a padding left of 5 rem, background image. Let's have URL creative flat lay photo work desk, and background size will be cover. Let's first see how that will look. Let's remove the background color here, Control K plus C, then go back to our site here and then refresh. And there we go. We now have that image here that we got from FreePic. Then let's go and target our form heading, border bottom 5 pixels solid black with a width of 15%. And go back to our, okay, so that will be for the form heading here. I think that's the border is not showing up. Let's see here first what's going on here. 5 pixels form heading. I think I need to go down here, and that's the reason why guys we did not actually give it a form heading class here. So let's go back to our browser here and then refresh, and there we go. We now have a border at the bottom and it's 15%, and there's no border on the left, no border on the no border on the right, no border on the left, and on the top only the border in the bottom part is being shown here. Let's go to each of the labels here, and let's give it a class of form label dash dash name. And of course this is for the name, this is for the email, and this one's going to be for the birthday, and this one's going to be for the comment. So let's go and replace this with comment, and this one's going to be for the gender. Now let's go back to our form styling section here. Now let's go and target the form label name, and let's apply a padding of right 27 pixels, font weight, let's give it a 700 font weight property. Let's see how that will look. Okay, so that's the spacing that we were able to apply there. Now let's go back to our code editor here. Then let's go and target the form label email, and padding right of 30 pixels, font weight same deal, so 700 also, and let's see how that will look. So at least they're in line. And let's go and target the form label birthday and comment. Let's have the birthday here and the comment here. So let's just make the birthday 10 pixels, and for the comment, let's remove the padding right here. And let's see how that will look on our browser. Okay, now let's go and add some line breaks in our, or perhaps we can go add some margin for our subscribe heading here. So let's go target that. Let's go back to our form heading, margin bottom of at least 5% first. Let's see how that will look. Okay, I think that's okay. Let's also move this text box below the comment label here. So let's go back to our code editor here. Let's go and line break here. Let's see how that will look. There we go. And I would want to move this a bit down. So let's play around with the padding top, at least 5% perhaps. Let's see how that will look. And there we go. And let's also work on our submit here and the gender here. I think we can also go and target the form gender. Form gender. And I believe we haven't yet gone down here, and we haven't given this a class name yet. Class name of form submit. Let's go back here and then let's go and target that form submit, and then give it a padding of 0.5 rem, 2 rem, text align center. Let's go back to our site here. Let's see how that will look now. There we go. And we have our gender here. We can select there. Now for the last part here, I would want to go and give credit to the photos. So I'll just be from the attribution. If you downloaded some photos of your own, guys, that's where I'll be putting our footer credits here. Let's save that. Let's go and see how that will look. There we go. Perhaps let's just go and put some line breaks here. Let's go back to our break here. Let me just close this. Let's have a line break here, line break here, and a line break here, and go back to our, at least it looks a lot easier to read, and we get to identify each of the sections from where we used the photos of our authors here from FreePic. Perhaps we should also go and add some properties for those elements. So let's go down our form or footer section here, and let's go and target the, we have our footer credits, this footer, let's have footer credits A here, then text decoration, none, color, white. So let's go back to our site here and let's see. There we go. It's a lot better to read. So you would see here guys, now we have our very simple static site with just purely HTML and CSS. As I've told you, we can actually create a simple site, informative site through the use of HTML and CSS. Now, of course, for the last part here, guys, I would want to go and use the validator here to see if our project validates. Control A, Control C, and go back to our validator. Let's see, validate. And we can see here that we have a problem with the attribute width. So let's go and try to remove this. I believe this is the problem here, the width and the height. So let's go and go up here and look for our attributes that involves the width and the height. Let's just remove those and control A, control C, then go back to our validator here and then control A, delete, control V or paste and then validate. And let's see here if this will be validating according to the schemas. Let's see here. Let me just press on that one more time. And there we go, guys. The document validates according to the specified schema. The only issue here is that it's giving us a recommendation because not all input type or the date input type is not supported by all browsers. So you can go and check out Polyfill. But overall, guys, the project that we've built here validates according to the specified schemas. Now, of course, we will need to go back to our site here, guys, and check the images. And you would see it's very big because we removed those property or attributes in our blog post images. So what we'll need to do here is to go and apply width 100 pixels, height of 100 pixels, and go and copy this, go down here, and go back to our code or site and refresh. And now we have our site here. And it's back to how we want the images to look like in our site. Another thing that I just want to do here is to just go and proofread. I actually read a part of the blog section here that says that computer literacy nowadays is an important skill to be acquired by any individual, especially due to the fact that most common tasks for different jobs in any industry will require tasks that can be achieved through the use of a computer. This is something that I advised my clients and students and friends, of course, that would want me to look up their site or check out their site. And proofreading is going to be sometimes an extra effort on our part as a web developer. We can give some suggestions to our clients. And you will see here that I actually made a mistake here that says that can be achieved. It should be, there should be another word here. I'm not an English major, guys, but I am actually not a native speaker. I'm a Filipino, and uh, that's why it takes me quite some time also to go and do some research about the words that I'll be using for an article or for a blog or for example when I'm doing some proofreading. This is just another scenario that you might go and encounter when you're already working with clients, and of course we would want to go and provide the best service to our clients. That's why we give some recommendations on how to make their sites more professional looking, especially if they have a business brand or something like that. At least we can go and help out our clients to generate leads for their sites and their business. So let's just go and save this, guys, and refresh this. I think that's already okay. That's much better, right? Require tasks that can be achieved through the use of a computer. So here, Another mistake that I've noticed here is this, it's completely off for you to use this template. So let's go and try to also correct that and add some space between the header credits here and the copyright. So let's go back to our code editor here, go down to our footer section, and let's go and create an OK here, or make a word OK, and quickly create a line spaced or line break just to quickly make some spaces. And there we go, guys. Okay, everyone. So I hope that you enjoyed this course, and I hope you learned a lot in our journey to building this very simple project that, as I've told you guys, it will be we will be using HTML and a few CSS so that we can at least have a project output after our HTML crash course discussion here. I'm really hoping that if you like the course, please do subscribe and click on the notification icon so that I can go and continue building similar content similar to this. And if ever you would want to go and practice some more HTML, as the saying goes, the best way to mastery is through practice, 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 practice. I'm sure you'll be able to achieve your goal of getting into the web development industry. And if you like the course, guys, and you would want to go and practice some more, I do have an online course that I'll be leaving a link down below. Kindly check that out. So with that, guys, thank you very much for your time, and I'm hoping that this HTML crash course will be getting the ball rolling for you in your journey to the web development industry. So thank you, stay safe, and see you on our next lessons.